And we are the Coalition, loud and proud, outrage porn-free, civilly disobedient media, broadcasting live on the worldwide Coalition Media Network here at the GoLocal Live Broadcast Center, 90 Way Boston Street, in the heart of the city we love. Facebook.com/The Coalition Radio, on the mighty Twitter at Coalition_radio, and of course at the homepage, coalitionradio.us, where this and a great deal of our video generated by what we call Coalition 2.0 resides in perpetuity by simply clicking on the YouTube link at the top of the page. Version 1.0, our radio days, simply click on past shows. Decided to have a little fun this week. It's been a tough couple of weeks if you're part of the sturm and drang of American politics here in Rhode Island. Baseball stadiums, DCYF, unemployment rate, underemployment rate, a steady barrage of confusing and difficult news. So why not have a little fun? Joining me live in studio for the first time is a good friend of mine, Justine Bonalowitz.
Hi guys.
She is of Sass and Sparkle Boutique, and as I mentioned in our pre-show publicity, I think one of the more interesting ideas, innovative ideas to come along in mobile retailing here in Rhode Island recent history. If you go to the Facebook page, you'll see broadcast shortly, or rebroadcast, a little quick tour we did outside of her mobile boutique, which currently is parked right outside of our downtown live studio here at 90 Way Boston Street. So her husband he's in charge, so ladies, please come on down. Let's redefine Miles' sort of comfort zone, and there is a special sale going on. But look to that video. That'll give you a quick tour of the interior and show you just how much fun retailing can be. And you know, you've got bricks and mortar, you've got internet, but what if the best aspects of the internet and bricks and mortar could be brought directly to your home, your office, for example, a spot where you're all gathering at a party, a bachelorette party. The ideas are virtually endless, and that's why we said we just have to have her on the show so we can and get her out to a little wider audience. Justine, welcome to the Coalition.
Thank you very much. Thank you for having me.
So the idea begs. I mean, this is one of those ideas when you see it in the flesh, if you will. You go, yeah, okay. And then the next question is, why didn't I think of that? What was your attaboy eureka moment when you came up with this idea?
So, as you said, my husband's out there tonight. He is like my #1 fan, and any crazy wild idea I come up with, he like smiles and nods. So this was one of those things where I'd seen it down south. Food trucks are huge, especially, in the Providence area. So the food truck boom, and now, the mobile boutique and mobile trucks and everything coming in. And I said, I think I can do that. And my husband's like, okay. Now I was making a decent salary at a big box retailer. I was the store manager, and life was good, nice cushy job, and all the bells and whistles, and I wasn't loving it. And so I said, I think I want to quit my job, and I want to get a truck. And he said, what? And I said, no, I think I want to quit my job. I think I can do this, and I think I can do a great job at it. So he said, all right, okay. And then I mentioned it a few more times, and then he started to take me a little more seriously. So I put the feelers out. I mentioned it to my dad, my uncle. He mentioned it to some of his friends, and one of those, a friend of a friend, knew someone that was selling a truck, and the rest is history.
There you go. and the derivation, where did the name come from?
So people that don't know me wouldn't know this, but I am that person that marches to the beat of my own drum. So I am sassy and sparkly, cheetah and sequins, and that's that's neutral in my closet. So that really represents me, and our little logo is the flamingo. I think flamingos are kind of cool, kind of funky, kind of awkward. It's kind of like my spirit animal. So that's kind of where it all came together. So Sass and Sparkle Boutique, and I have a giant flamingo on the side of my truck. So some people that don't remember the name call it the flamingo truck. Either one I'm cool with, as long as they remember me.
Right. Now, so you, in a sense, ride along with the food truck circuit, if you will, in addition to doing private events.
Definitely, yeah.
So tell us about a little bit, just give us a little insight into the food truck movement, because there is actually someone who's been very, very proactive in the Rhode Island community, organizing food trucks, bringing people together, gaining sort of that presence, the economies of scale, and also, quite frankly, successfully tackling some of the legal challenges involved in presenting an orderly, well-run,
Definitely.
consumer-friendly food truck environment. So tell us a little bit about that.
So, being a mobile boutique, I'm kind of the first, well, not the very first, but one of the first in this area. So it was something where I didn't really know, and I'm not from Rhode Island. I've been living here for just over 5 years. So I said, I need to get in with a good crowd. So I did my research, and I came across PVD food truck events. Mm-hmm. And any Providence local, you must have been to one. They're in Warwick, downtown Providence, the Roger Williams Carousel. And it's a gentleman, Eric, and he runs it, and he's awesome, and he fights tirelessly to make sure, that we're treated well, and that he can bring events, to the community that's a positive thing, and it's supporting local businesses, and it's fun and exciting. So he's always coming up with new places to go. So we actually just got an email letting us know, there are some new places in the works, so keep your eyes open for that. So I kind of jumped on the bandwagon with them. They've all been really awesome to me. Last year's season, I was 7, 8, 9 months pregnant. So these awesome food truckers helped me, with parking or with taking my racks down and things of that nature. But PVD Food Trucks has been a huge piece of my success in Providence for sure.
Yeah, what I've seen is there's a real sense of community. And what the movement has been able to do is overcome that initial fear that you represented competition to bricks and mortar. What folks have found is really when you're in a neighborhood, you're bringing more people out who not only frequent the food trucks, or in your case, your truck, the boutique, but then they're out and shopping, they're in the shopping mode, and they'll just as easily purchase something to eat or to wear at any one of the local stores in that community. It's been an addition to the community. It doesn't really represent competition, does it?
I think so. I mean, I always say community over competition. I think there's enough to go around for everyone.
Right.
So if I go to, say, a food truck event, before I was doing them, my husband took me out a few times, and we would go to an area that we hadn't been to before for the food truck event, and I would say, oh, we have to come back and try that restaurant, and we have to go into that store. So it does bring you to an area that you're not,
right,
usually going to. So I definitely think it's a positive thing. I think that, like I said, there's enough to go around for brick and mortar and mobile. We're all small business owners. We're all just trying to make a living. So I think that what I've seen just over the past year or so that I've been doing it is that, the brick and mortar are becoming, more welcoming to the mobile retailers now that they've kind of gotten a feel for us and realize that we're nice people.
Right. And quite frankly, I mean, you what's remarkable about the PVD food truck, that the whole community that's sponsored, it goes into all communities in Rhode Island. There's really, so you're bringing people into communities that, quite frankly, they might have, I don't want to say shied away from, but probably wouldn't have been right up on top of their list to go into. Yeah. And as a result, like I said, local businesses can prosper as well. It's what's wonderful about it too is that so many Rhode Island businesses have for so long felt they've operated somewhat in isolation. It's sort of you against the world. And whether it be the Small Business Saturday movement, the Crash Pawtucket movement, any one of these number of great ideas, usually generated by in the dreaded private net market, usually generated by entrepreneurs like yourself or Eric, that again, that's really the answer for Rhode Island's issues, isn't it? I mean, it's all about entrepreneurial activity.
I think it is. I mean, honestly, I think that in a day and age where, you just Amazon Prime it, that's, everyone does that. Mm-hmm. Going into, like I said, a big box retailer like I used to work in, there's not that personal connection. When you're shopping with me, or you're eating off one of the food trucks, you'll get to know these people. Like I have gotten to know them. You go, you hear their story, you get to learn them, you remember them. Oh, I remember seeing you at this event, and now, I told my friend that she had to come to this event. So it's really the experience that you have shopping or eating, with a local truck, or shopping with a local truck like myself. I feel like there's just a piece that no mall can offer.
Right. I mean, malls can be so, in my word, not yours, dehumanizing. I mean, it reduces it to a transaction. And there's sort of an emptiness because people work very hard for their money. And when you go to an organization like yours, or these food trucks, which are fabulous, it's a real labor of love.
Definitely.
It's absolutely the sense that there's a connection there, and I think it's critically important in a time when the internet is so dominant and separates us that we continue to find ways to come together as a community, not through any sort of forced activity, but just living life.
The fun stuff.
So how long have you been in business?
So I launched November of 2016 with my actual truck. Before that, I was saving up for a truck, so I did have some inventory that I would do at like pop-up shops with like a little one of those little easy up tents. But I actually had the grand opening of my truck November 2016.
Now, are you looking ultimately at some point to get to a bricks and mortar location? I get the sense that you're really focused on enhancing the mobile experience.
Yeah, so I always say that my dream is to have a fleet. That's
Okay.
that's what I always say. So you know, people that shop with me, especially like, you know, middle school age girls that are like, I love this. This is so cool. I'm like, well, maybe in a few years I can offer you a job. So brick and mortar, I mean, it's great for some people and some people have great success with it. But I think the fun part of what I offer is that experience where, you know, if you have a question, you know, you can Google it right on your phone. You know, in a world where everybody wants something right at their fingertips, I can give that. You know, you need an outfit, I can literally drive into your driveway, you know, and get that outfit for you. I have a group of friends coming over next weekend for a concert, and all my friends said, I have nothing to wear. Can you open the truck? So all my friends are coming over, you know, a few hours early, and we're going to, like, play dress up. But how cool is that to be able to do that and not have to go to the mall or order something online and have it arrive and have it not fit correctly?
Right. And this is why this is really this is the convenience of the internet, in that you're bringing the product to the home, but you're still retaining the personal shopping experience. In fact,
Definitely.
quite frankly, you're enhancing it because, you know, I've got to believe from, you know, the word on the street, you've got a significant repeat customer data, you know, customer base. And so let's get into a little bit of the purchasing process, your selections, because I guess, you know, at first you probably took a position of what you liked and what you thought would sell.
Right.
But over time, as you've developed a customer base, you're cross-pollinating. They're seeing, you're opening their eyes to, you know, something maybe a little different, a little more adventurous.
Yeah.
At the same time, you're getting a sense of where their comfort levels are and where they are. So how did, when you first started, what direction were you going to in terms of clothing, and what markets were you shooting for?
So that's a funny story. As I mentioned, the name Sass and Sparkle came from me kind of always being that person that stood out in the crowd. So I said when I first started buying inventory, because I didn't take out any loans, this was all my money that I worked hard for, me and my husband saved up. So I said, you know, I'm going to buy all this awesome stuff that I would wear in my everyday life. Well, not everybody in the world walks around with the same style sense that I have. So I learned that quite quickly. That not everybody thinks that leopard and sequins is a daily go-to. So I actually partnered up with my mom, who's awesome. She's a teacher, so she has to be dressed up, but she does work with the special needs community, so she has to be able to, you know, be down on the floor and be comfortable. So something that she was really looking for was leggings. So I wear leggings, and that's all well and good, but that opened up a whole new market. Now I have all of these school teachers that shop with me because my mom suggested a few things. I started carrying them, and people really liked it.
Right.
So people that I really, you know, respect and think that they support me and have my best interest, I will value their opinion, because, you know, everybody has different things that they like and that they look for. Just recently, within the past 6 months, I started carrying plus size. So in the beginning, it was just small through large and sometimes extra large. Now in select styles, I carry up through a 3X. So it's all a learning curve of what people want. I'm very open to that. I've had people send me messages, hey, I love this, but can you get it a little longer? Hey, I love this, but I'm a little bit larger size. So it definitely is. I mean, I'm just over a year into this, so I'm definitely still learning and open to suggestions. And as you mentioned, the customer base is expanding. So as it expands, so will what I carry in my, you know, variety and inventory.
Excellent. As you mentioned outside, you accept all credit cards.
Yep.
So folks literally, they can go crazy.
Yeah, I encourage them to go crazy.
No, that's great.
Yeah.
Now, in terms of manufacturers, where just a general idea of where you're sourcing your product. You know, is there a particular market that you're going after from that? And what's your personal philosophy about, you know, say quality and sizing and things like that?
So my biggest thing at first was sizing. I try and get a lot of my items made in the USA. That's not always the case. I do my best to do that, but I will say with sizing, I try to get sizes that make people feel good about themselves. So I hand select everything that's on the truck. So I go to different markets. I work with different wholesalers. I went to the Dallas market, which is one of the hugest markets, you know, in this area. So I went to Dallas, and you actually get to walk into these mini showrooms, and you get to touch things and feel things. So all of my items, I make sure that it's a good quality. You can throw it in the washing machine and the dryer. It's not going to fall apart. Also, just being like a busy mom, I don't want to have to bring stuff to the dry cleaner, so I stray away from that. So it's like washer, dryer, you're good to go. Everything is very soft. A lot of my things have pockets. It's just convenient and comfortable, but fashionable is kind of the look that I go for. And I do have some dresses more for date nights, but I would say the vast majority of my inventory is just that comfortable, good quality, low maintenance kind of style.
Now, I get the sense that you really love shopping.
I do.
All right. So now, in a very large sense, you get to shop not just for yourself, but you're shopping for literally hundreds and thousands of women throughout the area.
Yeah, and I get really excited. Like when a box comes, we have like a big like porch, and when a box comes, it's like Christmas, and I rip through it, and I always put on a little fashion show for my husband, and he's just like, oh yeah, looks good. But it's exciting because it is. It's like, you know, I feel like if I wasn't excited about it, then I'm in the wrong business. So it, you know what I mean? It's every time. So the new season just rolled out. Even though it's still freezing right now, spring is rolling out. So I just got in my spring merchandise, and I'm, you know, so excited about all of that. I got in some items for Valentine's Day. So it's definitely fun. It is shopping, but it's also I need to control myself because everything that I purchase, I don't get to purchase for myself. So my husband put a squash on that very early, and he's like, you can't take one of everything for yourself. So my favorites I do keep, but.
All right, speak to someone like yourself who's starting a business in the clothing industry. The competition is brutal, isn't it?
So competition is brutal. As we mentioned when I was in the truck, if you guys had saw that, there's a community called the Boutique Hub, and it is an amazing community, and I'm so glad that I stumbled upon it because they're all about the community of it. So I actually have had other boutique owners from different states, whether it's Texas, Oklahoma, Idaho, wherever. You know, I have a customer that's looking for this. I don't carry it. I sent them your way. So I really think that there is enough to go around. I know that not everybody feels that way, but I stay in my lane. I focus on what I'm doing and hope that that's good. But if I know that I'm not carrying something that somebody's looking for, I'll point them in the right direction. Because like I said, I have a 23-foot truck. I can't carry something for everyone. There's no way that I could fit it all.
Right. You said you're sourcing primarily from American manufacturers.
Yes.
What, you know, and if you give it maybe a tip to other business owners, I mean, what type of scale do you have to be able to process the thing and sell things affordably? How big do you have to be?
So my big thing in the beginning was I was very focused on my costs. I wanted my costs to be low so that people could afford things. And in the beginning, I did buy some stuff that wasn't the best quality. So I decided within a few months in the business, I would rather charge slightly more and know that I can stand behind my product rather than buy something, you know, inexpensively so then I can mark it up and make all kinds of money. So you won't find anything on my truck more than $70. Oh. So that's kind of my cap. A lot of my items range between 30 to like 38 for most of my pieces, and then I have the leggings and stuff that are less expensive. But when you're starting out, you can go and you can buy packs of clothing, and it's 2 smalls, 2 mediums, 2 larges, and that's a good place to start. And that's like a pre-pack that you can get. Right. As you get bigger and you work with different manufacturers and you find certain labels that you really like, you can definitely work with them to order greater quantities. But to anybody that wants to start, it's a labor of love, but it's 24/7. So I have people now, my son's almost 5 months old, so I'm a stay-at-home mom. They're like, oh, that must be so great, you're a stay-at-home mom, and you can like run your business, you know, when you feel like it. And I'm like, when I feel like it, my business is 24/7. I'm on my phone, people send me messages, you know, trying to find places to go. It is a 24/7 job. So if somebody thinks that they're going to work for themselves and it's going to be awesome and easy and take all kind of vacations, you might be in for a rude awakening. I love it, and it's worth it, but it's definitely, when I thought of what working for myself would be like, this might not have been exactly what I pictured.
Well, the way I've always put it, because I did work for myself for a significant part of my life, if you're awake, you're working.
Seriously.
Yeah.
True story.
Yeah. And part of it is again, it's the love of it, but it's never ending. You simply can't turn the phone off and, have that kind of, let's take a couple days of me time, shut down, and it's not quite how it flies, is it? So at that price point, you are at or competitive with, or even less expensive than most mail order. I mean, once you factor in things like shipping costs or the notion that someone doesn't have to have a minimum order to get the free shipping, you present a direct experience where sizing is going to be correct, where it's going to be cost effective, and you've got a great selection. You're not really sacrificing anything, are you?
I don't think so. Like I said, I try and have a little bit for everyone. I'm sure that there's no possible way that I could have something for everyone, but I definitely do my best. I am launching a website. I know that we talked a little bit about, more of the personal, getting to know, your business and come to the truck. But for those people that come to the truck and know what their size is and know my selection and start to trust me, I've had a lot of people requesting that I open online. So hopefully the end of February I'll be launching a website. But as of right now, it is not yet.
And you'll let us know so we can share that.
Definitely.
So in our next segment, we're going to talk about the different styles that you cover. But let's spend a couple minutes before our break.
Sure.
You'll do the PVD food truck circuit, but you're available for really all sorts of events, aren't you? I mean, birthday parties. I mean, what are some of the events you've already done?
I'll say, if you'll take me, I'll be there. So I did spring weekend at Wheaton College in Norton. I was invited, so I literally parked out in their quad, and they would shop the truck. I've done events at...
Now, what was that like? That must have been...
So it was spring weekend, and I was there Sunday, and Saturday was the big party. So it didn't really start picking up until like 2 o'clock in the afternoon. People were sleeping off the night before, but it was fun. It was a lot of fun, and the stock that I had in my truck was definitely geared more toward colleges. With a lot of colleges, especially in the Providence area, I have to actually be invited. So as we were driving down this way, I saw a lot of people pointing and waving. So if anyone's interested, we'll be happy to come to any college. But in Providence, you have to be invited.
Right.
I'm not just able to go and park anywhere. But I've also done breweries. I've done Cape Cod Beer, which is down Cape in Hyannis, Mass. What else have I done? The Oyster Festival, the Cape Verdean Festival in Onset, Massachusetts. I did the Hot Air Balloon Festival in Connecticut. So I'm always on the lookout for different and new and exciting events. So if you would like to have me, I do girls' nights. I've been to countless girls' nights in. So they have, cheese, wine, crackers, and they come and shop on the truck at their leisure. So yeah, and I've done fundraisers too, Relay for Life fundraisers. So a percent of the sales I donate right back to the organization.
Excellent.
So yeah.
If you're just joining us, Justine Bonalowitz is with us. She is the proprietress, if you will, of Sass and Sparkle, really to the Providence, Rhode Island market. I'm getting a sense that it's out there, but to the Providence, Rhode Island market, a really unique concept, and that is, in fact, a mobile boutique. So if you're that, sleep-deprived, crazed mom who wants to get together with a group of her friends and have a fun evening, adult beverages might be involved, potentially.
Not for me. I have to drive the truck, but you can have as many as you'd like.
Right, but we'll bring to you a completely tailored clothing solution unique to really that particular group of folks.
Definitely.
You've got all the, if I'm summing it up right, Counselor, you've got all the advantages of a bricks and mortar, in that you've got lots of selection. The advantage of bringing it to you, so you're not fighting traffic, you're not fighting the mall crowds, you're not fighting the madness at the Providence Place Mall.
Parking garage.
Right? And at the same time, that the devil, which is sizing, I guess, is not going to be an issue, because you're right in the truck is a dressing room, and whether it be at your home or at one of those sections, you're going to be able to try on everything you buy.
Definitely.
You can buy things by credit card, and at some point soon there will be a web presence. Just want to take a quick break, an ode to one of our sponsors, airsciences.net. Darryl Gould, by the way, was on the show, and he joined us a few short weeks ago. That video is up on our Facebook page as well as our YouTube page. It's been a difficult couple of weeks weather-wise, and so if you find yourself worrying about mold remediation, if unfortunately we're the victim, if you will, of a flood, frozen pipes, any of those things, airsciences.net. Daryl Gould and his team have been in business for years. They specialize in mold remediation, biohazards, health issues related to autoimmune diseases. Essentially, they can come to your home and make you whole again. Airsciences.net. As always, we ask folks to support people who support independent media. In this state, we're all a little bit challenged by the economy and life. For those willing to invest in organizations that provide a different perspective on the news, we ask you their support. There's a certain amount of bravery in putting your name on a show like this, and so please give Daryl and his group a shot. Airsciences.net, bringing safety and cleanliness and a sense of peace to a home that may be challenged by any one of a number of biohazards and mold issues. You are listening to the Coalition. I know this looks a little different than our average show. We're not talking politics for once. We're not we're not intoning about the evils of this government official or that government official. We actually decided to have a little bit of fun tonight and feature, as we are going to be doing occasionally in the coming months, local entrepreneurs who contribute so much to our economy. Number one, the quality of life, by offering folks shopping alternatives and business alternatives to the normal humdrum existence that sometimes we all find ourselves sort of trapped in. They employ people, they create wealth, they create opportunity. And in a state like Rhode Island, we rely on small businesses, and as a result, we ask you that you support small business and give small business a shot, not just on your annual Small Business Saturday, but make it part of your life. Because these days, given the distribution advantages of the net and the way small business has become such an important part of our economy, you can find price, selection, quality, convenience, and fun in a local vendor, in a local store, and a local business person, and really not sacrifice anything. We need not pay homage with our hard-earned dollars to the big box store anymore. We don't need to be slaves to that. And if anything, the web has broadened the experience for all of us so that we can really improve the quality of our life and the community around us by supporting local businesses. Again, Justine Benalowitz is here in studio. It is a Sass and Sparkle boutique. It's an award-winning, nationally recognized mobile boutique. Her truck is actually right now is parked right outside of the Worldwide Media Broadcast headquarters of the Coalition. So if anyone's downtown and they want to swing by and take a shot and buy something, great. But what work in the coming weeks? It's a little cold right now, but business continues on, doesn't it? Where are we going to find you in the next few weeks? Anything coming up?
So I do have a few house parties, but I won't really start up my season until about April.
Okay.
So that's kind of when you'll start to see the food trucks and fashion trucks and kind of come out of hibernation. Because to be perfectly honest, I can bundle up, but nobody wants to try on an outfit, when it's 30 degrees outside.
It was comfortable inside the truck.
Well, I mean, I have my little space heater, my little generator. I make it work, but my season will be in full swing from April until about October.
Excellent.
Yeah. Excellent.
So let's talk. You brought some samples with you.
I did.
I'm going to turn the stage over to you because I can't even dress myself well. I will not attempt to be party to contributing to anyone else's fashion demise. So I'm going to turn it over to you, and why don't you give us a little bit of a demonstration about what you sell?
Okay, so as I was talking about earlier, we did just get in some new spring arrivals. So I'm going to show you a few dresses that I have for Valentine's Day, for date night, or if you're not going on a date and you're just doing a girls' night, totally fine. You can still look gorgeous, and then I'll show some of the spring new arrivals. So this one is one of my personal favorites. I'm holding it over you. It looked nice on you. It's velvet, so velvet is definitely very in. So it's just a gorgeous velvet with the detail right here, and it's a shift dress, so it's very figure flattering, and it's very roomy. So if you eat too much at dinner, he won't know. So this is one of my favorites right here. I have it small through large, and it's just $32. So really great price point. And after the show, probably either tonight or tomorrow morning, depending upon how my son is this evening, I'll post some of these items. So although I don't have an online store just yet, people can make purchases, and we can do it via PayPal. Mm-hmm. And then my other item, once again, we're rocking some velvet. is just a nice, this hits right above the knee. And this one is just $30, and this is small through large. So some great options for Valentine's Day, or if you have any special event coming up. And now we will get into spring, which is my favorite. I just like to think warm thoughts, right? Like when it's so cold, you just want to think that the sunshine is eventually coming. Like that's how I feel. So this is one of our new dresses for spring. A really fun print with a little crisscross detail. We threw a necklace on there. This comes in small through XL, and it's just $40. And the best part of this dress is it has pockets. So I don't know about you, but if a dress has pockets, it's a must-have for me.
Now you bring up an important point when you mention accessories. You do sell shoes and accessories as well, right?
I sell some shoes, once again, because I only have a little bit of space in my truck. I do sell some, but in the warmer months, sandals, I tend to sell more of those because they take up less room than a boot. But I do have necklaces, earrings, scarves, and shoes as well. This is another item, just a nice, long, lightweight plaid, and I just paired it with some denim leggings. Nice necklace here. And this is just $34 right here. So those are, I have a lot more on the truck, but that's kind of my two favorites that I brought in. I also wanted to show, I mentioned that I have some plus size that we just got in. So this is in XL through 3X. So this is a nice vibrant pink dress with a nice lace detail, gives you that hourglass shape. And that's available in XL through 3X and just $32. This would look amazing on someone for date night or Valentine's Day. And then I also have a more casual look. So just a tunic and some really fun leggings with a nice scarf. And all of this is available XL through 3X as well. And I do have some other just basics. I'm going to talk a little bit about trends for the upcoming season. So
She didn't even look at me when the word trends.
What do you mean? You're trendy. I'll get you spiffed up. So a big trend this spring is definitely some fun colors, kind of a pop of color. So you have your royal blue, yellow, and that beautiful purple tone, and just tunics, very basic. Tunics, you can wear it as a dress, you can throw some leggings under it. So like I was mentioning, it's just kind of that comfortable, effortless fashion. And the other thing, which I think goes without saying for spring, is florals. So we just got this adorable dress in, little ruffle sleeve, little keyhole detail in the back, but no surprise that florals are in for spring. And last but not least, is ruffle detail. So this is the front of the shirt, but the back has a nice ruffle detail. So this is something that you can wear to work at the office, or you can also wear it on a date night if you dress it up with some skinny jeans and some heels. So those are my big things for spring. I do have some more stuff coming in, but that's just what I have so far.
Excellent. Now, where do you talk about trends?
Yeah.
The great global question that guys will always ask is, is there a central body? Is there a government, trends, that actually decides? Is there in a secret meeting somewhere in a basement in Providence that decides skinny jeans are in? How does this happen?
You know, if there is that one person that decides what the trend is, I want that job. I pay attention to trend reports, and also because I go to different markets, there are people that get paid lots and lots of money to. I don't know if they research the trends or if they just decide this is what I like, so we're going to go with it. But we all follow suit. So I always have some things that I consider staple pieces, like blazers, cardigans, like nice scarves and jewelry. So those things I feel like never go out of style, but different prints and the different like cut of the jeans, like skinny jeans or flare jeans. I just look at all the different trend reports and kind of decide what I like the most, what I don't like too much, and then I kind of meet somewhere in the middle. But I don't know who the end all be all of trends is.
Right. So what trends are we in right now for as winter closes? What was hot and what?
Oh man, puffy jackets, right? Just to be warm. No, for winter it was big into the faux leather. The faux leather jackets were really big. Skinny jeans are still huge. They go right into the boots. Boots were huge, over-the-knee boots. Yeah, winter I feel like isn't as much fun. With spring and summer, there's a lot more versatility. But yeah, so definitely. But the one trend that is coming up, and a lot of people are trying to fight it, is the skinny jeans are kind of cycling their way out, and the wide leg trouser pant, as well as crop jeans and the flare jeans and the mom jeans. And now that I'm a mom, I'm like, hey, don't call them that.
Define again. So what happens too, and I'm going to give you a business idea, because I think as a husband, who wife will not allow him any suggestions whatsoever, because she won't. She's got taste. She's everything I'm not. She's a wonderful person, and she's got taste. Whereas I'm like late Velvet to her young Priscilla. I'm going to beg you to try this out this spring. Okay.
Okay.
All right. Particularly, maybe perhaps before Mother's Day.
Okay.
Have an event where you invite men, and have them bring a picture and try and figure out, sneak through the whatever to get the sizes, because we have no idea whatsoever. Right? Maybe bring a picture or two or something, and so pick out something that's actually that A, will be trendy, B, she'll like, and C, the most important part, the most biggest challenge for modern day men is that it's tasteful, as opposed to what we would normally pick out for a wife.
So funny story. I was parked inside a mall through Christmas. So it was called the Kingston Collection in Kingston, Massachusetts. And I was actually parked inside of the mall, which was a really cool experience, driving inside of a mall.
Now, was this like an older mall that they had retrofitted, or what?
So it's an older mall, and they're kind of reinventing it. So one of the entrances, when they designed it tall enough to accommodate food trucks and things of that nature. So it's kind of more of a entertainment mall than a shopping mall, if that makes sense. So they have a lot of bars and arcades and things of that nature. So they invited us in, and a lot of the women, when they were shopping for other people, would stumble upon the truck, and they would say, oh my gosh, I love this. Oh my gosh, I love this. So I would actually jot it down, and not all the husbands, but some of the women would send their husbands in, and they would say, oh yeah, my wife Susie, came in and she said this, and I'm like, let me see, and I would flip through, and I would know what to point them in the direction of purchasing. So I would definitely love to do more of that, because it is great. It's because nothing's worse than opening something on Christmas and you either don't like it or it's not the right size. And it's just like, oh man,
or you wouldn't be seen in public wearing it because of a number of issues.
Yeah, well, you're a guy, so you don't want to get her too big of a size, because then that's an insult. But if you get her too small of a size, then she's going to be upset it doesn't fit. So you're kind of in a pickle. So come to me for Mother's Day or Christmas or any of those holidays, and I will do my best.
Schedule a fashion intervention. How about that for
that show, What Not to Wear? And I think it's off the air. I'm going to bring it back.
There you go. So your season starts in April.
Correct.
You're available for parties, any type of private parties whatsoever.
Yep.
Again, just to kind of rehash a little bit, you've clearly got a huge diverse selection of clothing. When is there a certain time of the year the new spring collection comes in? Or is that what's starting to happen right now?
It's starting to happen right now. So one of the things that I did learn from being in big box retailers is right now my husband was like, why are you getting spring dresses? Like, it's still freezing out. But you want to be ahead of the next season.
Right.
Because right now people are thinking like, I want to be warm, and I want to get ready for spring and think happy spring thoughts. So believe it or not, when it's freezing outside, people will come on the truck and they will buy those spring pieces. So you kind of want to be ahead of the curve. And also, the different distributors that I work with, they don't have an endless supply. So if I don't buy ahead of time, I could miss out on styles that I really want to have on my truck.
And that's one of the most frustrating things, particularly I've seen my wife. You get there you need something new, and all of a sudden, wait a minute, I was here a month ago. I want that, and it's just gone, isn't it?
Yeah, and that's actually, I'm glad you brought up that point. That's something that I think is really cool about the truck. So when you go into any store, and I'm not against big box retailers. No, I shop there too sometimes. But when you go in somewhere, you'll see that they have 50 size smalls in this dress. So, Providence, it's a college city, and, nothing is worse than showing up to a party and 5 other people are wearing your items. So, one really cool thing that I do is
Guys don't find that tragic, by
I
the
know.
way.
If it's a good dress, they're like, you all look great. So what I try and do is I try and order smaller varieties. So I might get 3 of one style and a small and a medium and a large. So if you're shopping with me, you can be sure that if you're going to a party, not, a dozen other girls are going to show up in that same outfit. So I think that that's something really cool that I offer that not a lot of other places can, because, if it's a hot item, you want to keep getting it in, and, the higher ups, if you're at a big box retailer, oh, that's selling well, we're going to send you 5 more cases of it. As where with me, if something's selling well, I might reorder it one more time, but I don't want to get so many of it that it becomes something that everybody has.
Excellent. All right. Give folks your Instagram information, your Facebook information again.
Okay. So for Facebook, it's Sass and Sparkle Mobile Boutique, and on Instagram, it is just Sass and Sparkle Boutique. And if you search either one of those, you'll be able to see where I'll be heading to, where I'll be going. I always try and post, especially in my busy season, I'll post the week. So if I really want to come shop the truck, but I'm busy on Thursday night, then you'll see where I am Friday or Saturday.
Okay. You're getting in spring clothing. When do you anticipate? When does the summer season start? Because that's in Rhode Island. Summer is everything here.
Summer is everything. So I will probably start to get in summer clothing probably April.
And will you do bathing suits, or do you strictly more of this type of style?
I don't do bathing suits. I have had a few requests for it, but it's a very tricky thing because the sizing with the tops and the bottoms, it gets very tricky on sizing, and because of my space restriction, I do have like sun hats, bathing suit cover-ups, things of that nature, but I've stayed clear of bathing suits.
Okay. Wonderful. It's just great to see local business thriving and people innovating as opposed to the same old. I wish you nothing but success. I want you to keep us apprised of your progress, and
Definitely.
if you've got special events going on, just please let us know so that we can publicize them. Folks, if you have an independent business that has a unique angle or unique perspective on the status quo, something fresh and different, you can tell GoLocal Prob in general is the place to be. We pride ourselves here, both on my show and during the GoLocal Prob production, GoLocal Live during the day, on getting bleeding edge restaurants, and now we're branching out into retail adventures, if you will. Justine Bonalowitz, Sass and Sparkle Boutique, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me.
And
it was
congratulations
fun.
on a great business.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
We're going to take a quick break right now. Of course, this segment of the show is sponsored by Air Sciences, airsciences.net. We are, in fact, the coalition, loud and proud, outrage porn-free, civilly disobedient media, broadcasting live on the worldwide Coalition Media Network at the GoLocal Live Broadcast Center, 90 Way Boston Street, in the heart of the city we love, Providence, Rhode Island. It's a chilly evening out, but people are starting to get out and about. We're starting to wake up, I think, from the long winter's nap. Folks, the last couple of nights, the city's been hopping. Don't stay at home. Get out and about. Sample businesses like Justine's or businesses around the city, bars, restaurants that we need and deserve your local support. Facebook.com/The Coalition Radio, on the Mighty Mighty Twitter at Coalition_Radio, and of course at CoalitionRadio.us, our flagship website, where this and future shows will be listened in perpetuity by merely clicking our YouTube link. Stay tuned. I'm gonna have a little conversation with the audience about a disturbing announcement today in the world of journalism that I want to share with you, share my take on it, and of course, tweet us at Coalition_Radio if you should disagree. I welcome and embrace alternative opinions, particularly really combative ones. Stay tuned. We'll be right back. And we are back. We are the Coalition, loud and proud, outrage porn-free, civilly disobedient media, broadcasting live on the worldwide Coalition Media Network here at the GoLocal Live Broadcast Center, 90 Way Boston Street in the heart of the city we love. Facebook.com/The Coalition Radio, on the mighty Twitter at Coalition_radio, and CoalitionRadio.us, our webpage. We've got a few minutes before, I believe, David Norton, who's a candidate for Rhode Island State Senate, and of course well known to folks in the stadium opposition crowd, is going to be joining us. He'll be dialing in, so we might have a little bit of a confusing transfer. But I just had to touch briefly on an event that was publicized today. Kate Bramson, who's a wonderful reporter for the Providence Journal, has decided to join the Senate staff in a policy position. I had the opportunity to meet Kate once or twice during her tenure as a reporter for the Providence Journal. She doesn't need me to say, or anybody doesn't need me to say how smart she is, or what a good writer she is. Which I was all the more disappointed to see today's announcement. I find it troubling for a couple of reasons. I am not going to accuse the Providence Journal or Kate Bramson of, during her extensive Providence Pawtucket Red Sox coverage, of anything improper. I'm just not going to play that card. I have been continually disappointed by the lack of what I'll call the Providence Journal's coverage of expert witnesses or expert testimony, or even fundamental coverage of the opposition to it. By and large, the Providence Journal has uniquely been a cheerleader for this in very subtle ways. The editorial board continues to weigh in favor of it, despite the obvious flaws. That, of course, is their choice. However, the lack of any substantial competition, not by citizen activists. I am not so self-absorbed, despite claims to the contrary. I think that anyone needs to call me, or any one of the number of friends that I've made who have fought so hard against this. What I found disturbing is, though, their failure to reach out routinely to what I'll call the expert community, economists who might have viewpoints opposing it, the stadium project. Business leaders who might feel that they were, essentially going to be threatened in terms of competition for the consumer dollar by yet another state-subsidized operation. My good friend, Mike Rinaldi, who's the vice chairman of the Libertarian Party, has a great way of portraying this with regard to government's near-death wish obsession with subsidizing and picking winners and losers here and saying, I'm going to try and get it right, I probably won't. But he points out the obvious, what I'll call, admission of failure that takes place whenever government feels the need to provide a subsidy, provide funding, provide a tax break, because doesn't that point to the notion that the community that the rest of us have to work in is clearly flawed, whether it be the tax system, whether it be interest rates, whether it be any number of factors that the government directly controls. So by picking and choosing winners and losers, by subsidizing the few, they're clearly admitting how deeply flawed at every level the environment that the rest of us have to work in is. I wish I had thought of it that way, and I wish I'd put it in such a straightforward manner. But that is the fundamental issue here, and the Providence Journal fails to cover that aspect really at any level. The Providence Journal failed during this entire process to really give an adequate forum to debate the issues. Instead, it continued to provide videos, heartwarming videos of Pawtucket Red Sox owners, one-sided editorials, and not really to engage in any level of real debate with the body politic. Frankly, they don't have to. That's, they're a privately owned institution. They are beholden to no one but their stockholders. But if the central message of journalism is to provide clear and unbiased reporting, one has to question at this point the appropriateness, if you will, of someone who is covering the most hotly contested story in recent Rhode Island Senate history, really going back a few years. You'd have to go back a few years to when the Rhode Island Senate decided to veto the budget to get into something as controversial. And while reporting on this, and this is the key question, decided to not just take a communications job, but to take a senior policy position with the Rhode Island State Senate. We have seen, I won't call it a revolving door because folks really haven't come back yet, but we have seen a constant influx, both local, over the last 5 or 10 years. I'll call it influx is probably an incorrect word. I'll call it an exit strategy for local media types to go work for the government that they in fact once covered. So the comment I made today on Twitter is in fact a reporter's job at the Providence Journal an internship for future state government employment? It's certainly seeming to look like that. And I had the opportunity to discuss with a couple of real journalists today. I'm just an activist who's got some airtime, but some real journalists today, that sort of wall that's supposed to exist between editorial and sales, between editorial and reporting, that sort of notion that there is true independence between reporting and those that you report from. Because as someone who used to share the airwaves with me here once put so aptly, if it's not adversarial, it's advertising. And that's what I find disturbing. In the midst of one of the most challenging stories we've faced in the last couple of years, that a senior member of the press would effectively go work for the policy operations of one of its prime sponsors. Why do I say this is one of the most challenging stories? Because this is a reflection, really, this is a potential break, a dividing line between the failed economic policy of the past, where we constantly feel like, again, admitting that the current operating environment is flawed, it's broken, where we constantly have to subsidize individual businesses. We pick winners and losers. We decide that certain businesses are worthy of the tax dollars of literally the people, the businesses, if you will, that are in competition for the consumer dollar. It's an interesting theory that obviously I rail against all the time. One point is indisputable. It has not worked. It is not working now. To which point I would proffer that it will not work in the future. So is the Providence Journal reporting staff then supposed to then segue neatly with a fast couple of dance steps into the establishment that has provided us with a generation of failure? And that's the question. I seek not as a reader, as a one person, to impugn Ms. Bramson's record. I think, by and large, from what I've seen, she's above reproach. I question, however, an environment and where this type of open door exists. And one has to question generically, not at any one individual level, generically, if, in fact, the incentive will continue to exist for people who are supposed to provide fair and balanced reporting of the news to effortlessly become the news. And one must always question, in that transition period, whether or not bias was an issue. Let me know what you think. Again, Facebook.com/The Coalition Radio, on the Mighty Mighty Twitter at Coalition_radio, and of course our website at coalitionradio.us. The central question, in the past 10 years or so, countless reporters are now the news. Countless reporters have become part of the political firmament. What's remarkable today are two things. Number one, the fact that the reporter involved has been so recently part of the fundamental story itself. And number two, equally as important, is the policy position, not a communication position, the policy position she now inhabits. Folks, we're going to take a quick break now. I think in the next couple minutes, David Norton, candidate for Rhode Island State Senate, is going to be joining us. He's been a provocative voice on a number of issues facing the city of Pawtucket. He is a resident of the city of Pawtucket, whether it be the hospital situation, the fire situation, the theater situation, the brewery situation, the baseball situation, clearly, in the words of the great late Vincent A. Buddy Cianci, we have a frittata on our hands happening in the city of Pawtucket. And David, I believe, is uniquely qualified to report on it. Stay tuned. We'll be right back. And we are back. We are the Coalition of Loud and Proud, outrage porn-free, civilly disobedient media, broadcasting live on the Worldwide Coalition Radio Network, here at the GoLocal Live Broadcast Center, 90 Way Boston Street, in the heart of the city we love, Providence, Rhode Island. Facebook.com/The Coalition Radio, on the Mighty Mighty Twitter at Coalition_radio, and of course, coalitionradio.us. Joining me live via phone, he's in the midst of some pretty heavy campaigning right now, is my good friend, longtime contributor to the Coalition, citizen activist, and now a candidate for Senate District, what is it, Dave?
It's Senate District 8 in Pawtucket.
Senate District 8 in Pawtucket. I get them all mixed up. Of course, he is running in a special election. Now, I'm going to editorialize for a minute, then I'm going to bring David on. He is running in a special election for the seat vacated by one Senator Jamie Doyle, who for personal reasons chose to leave the Rhode Island Senate. Special election coming up, and then of course it'll be much like the 70 race out in Portsmouth. It will get to do it all over again this November. A quick note on the race. I know 2 of the 3 people in the race. Ms. Kano, who is, I believe, a council person for the city of Providence, if I have that right, has chosen to run.
Yep, City of Pawtucket.
Yep, and again, my words, not my guess, but if you go to www.inthetank.com, you will find Ms. Kano. Or, as I like to say, if you're one day lost in Pawtucket and you're trying to find City Hall, just follow the Sandra Kano bumper stickers. Because, yikes. Lovely individual. Again, not imputing anyone's honesty, but lock, stock, and smoking barrel, part of the status quo in the city of Pawtucket. And I don't think there's any question, given the events of the past few weeks, outside of the Pawtucket Red Sox dilemma, that the city of Pawtucket is finding itself facing challenges that it has not seen in the past few years, an accumulation of just bad news after bad news after bad news. Now, Pawtucket's a wonderful city. I always compared my thoughts as Brooklyn to Providence's Manhattan. And in a lot of ways, if you spent any time in Brooklyn recently, you'll know that Brooklyn's funkier. There's more adventure. It's more of a family. Brooklyn's. If you live in New York City right now, quite frankly, Brooklyn's the place to be. And Pawtucket has that same potential. And that's what we're going to talk about a little bit tonight. David, welcome back to the Coalition. Good to have you on. Thanks for joining us at this last minute.
Thank you for having me on, Pat. I really appreciate it.
Now, let's first of all kind of vent a little bit. I just editorialized. I'm not here to impugn, and I'm speaking again about the situation with the Providence Journal. I'm not going to impugn Ms. Branson's honor here on these airwaves. I'm not here to do that. What is difficult for me to accept that yesterday, or at least a day or two ago, the Providence Journal was using someone who was about to become the policy director of the Rhode Island State Senate, a Rhode Island State Senate that is clearly intensely involved in negotiating a pro-Pawtucket Red Sox situation. That's a problem. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I feel the same, Pat. So I called out Ms. Branson a couple of months ago for not being very objective and not covering the opposition to the stadium issue. And in fact, she actually edited one of her articles because I complained about it. She had written something like there were 65 Paw Sox supporters and maybe 18 opposers. And I pointed out to her that the mayor of Pawtucket does not count, the mayor of Cumberland does not count, the mayor of Central Falls does not count, and Larry Lucchino does not count. No. And you can go right on down the line to the last Paw Sox employee, and they all don't count because that's not real. They're not citizens. They're not residents that are being affected by all of this. They're actually the people trying to ram this down our throats. And she didn't like that, and we had an exchange, and it didn't get nasty or anything, but I was forced to unfriend her on Facebook, and I stopped emailing her, and she stopped calling me.
Right. And the frustration here is that regardless of how we feel about the Journal on any given day, and I think any citizen activist has sort of an ongoing love-hate relationship with the Journal. There's days we welcome their presence. There's other days they make us nuts. I don't think anyone, and by the way, this wasn't a point I was looking to fight. I believe it's truly, if I'm an activist in a cause, it's my responsibility to generate media. It's my responsibility. I no longer wait for the media to come to us. Those days are that ship has sailed. But since the issue now has been raised by this hiring, which I'm still astonished by, waiting for the you got punked bit. We have to take note as the opposition about how little coverage is there, and I'm certainly no one any special. I'm just a regular guy who's been involved in a cause. But I have routinely fielded calls from WJAR, from the John DePietro show, from a variety of people at WPRO, from public television, GoLocal Prov. These are all folks who have reached out to me, and I believe reached out to you as well, and other people of goodwill in the opposition who I think who credibly represent a point of view. and asked us for our opinion and given us a forum. Earlier today, I spent 20 minutes on the John DePietro show, ironically just before I heard this news, discussing it. And to John's credit, he has routinely given me a platform to provide our perspective. It's breathtaking that the folks who aren't journalists, I mean, John DePietro is not a journalist. He runs a radio show. He's an advocate, an information provider, a little bit of entertainment. It's a mixed bag, just like most of the shows at WPRO. They are not journalists per se. They editorialize and they entertain in varying degrees depending on the day. So I find it ironic that most of our coverage, in both yours and my case, has been from folks in that venue, and the paper of record, I don't know about you, but pretty much ignored the group that I'm involved in. What do you think?
Yep. Yeah, absolutely. And as a matter of fact, I did an interview when this Apex move story first broke. I think it was with Channel 12. There was Channel 12, Channel 10. They were all there outside McCoy Stadium, and I did an interview with Channel 12. And boy, they didn't like it because they thought I was the Keep the Paw Sox in Pawtucket guy, and that was it. That's my only goal. And I just unleashed in the interview about the Paw Sox owners and the taxpayer-funded stadium situation that nobody wants. And long story short, it didn't get on the news.
Right.
It didn't make it because they came there wanting a story about someone being positive about the Paw Sox owners moving from McCoy Stadium and building a new taxpayer-funded stadium to Apex.
Right.
That's the story that they were expecting from me, but they certainly didn't get it, and they didn't publish a word or put anything on the news that I said at all.
Right. And now, I did the hearing. I'm sorry, go ahead, buddy. No.
Yeah, so that was kind of disturbing to me. And then, you've got other local media in Pawtucket, for example, the Pawtucket media. We had a protest outside City Hall 2 days ago. 75 people showed up in 20-degree weather. We were freezing. It was cold, it was dark, but we marched and we chanted and we protested the Memorial Hospital situation and compared that to the stadium situation, and we also protested this transfer station that they're trying to put in Fair Lawn, Pawtucket. Mm-hmm. And the media didn't cover it. You know who covered it? Steve Alquist. So we have two media companies, right? We've got Steve Alquist, we've got GoLocal Prav, and maybe a few others that are covering stories locally that we really care about. And we have this, I guess everybody's calling it the legacy media now.
Right.
They only cover what they're told to cover. There's no independence and there's really very little objectivity to what they're reporting. And it's very disturbing. It's a very disturbing trend.
Right. Well, I mean, when we had the hearing in Cumberland, it was a big enough of a deal that state senators from other districts were there. It was a big enough a deal that the head of the Blackstone Valley Chamber of Commerce, as well as prominent labor unions, showed up. It was that big a deal, and yet the local newspaper, crickets. All these organizations have online editions where you would think, quite frankly, a local protest in sleepy little burbs like Cumberland would, quite frankly, get them lots of clicks. I mean, let's be blunt. I mean, these are
Mike Tambora even showed up. One of the owners even showed up, and Guy Default, who is a paid consultant for the Paw Sox and very influential here politically in Pawtucket, showed up. I sat right next to them. And for them to not cover that story is just amazing. And as you pointed out, a state senator was also there.
Right. Senator Calkin, who, by the way, all credit to her, did the right thing when it came her opportunity to vote. She stood tall. So, Senator Calkin and I probably disagree on a number of political issues, but I will never question her personal integrity. She she addressed an issue, she stood tall on an issue, and she backed it up with her vote. And I can't imagine.
Absolutely.
And that could have made her very popular up in Halitosis Hall that night.
No, it takes a lot of coverage, a lot of courage, I mean, and that's what we need in our leadership. Those are the real leaders. The other guys are just rubber stamps as far as I'm concerned, and most of the people that I talk to feel the same way. Mm-hmm. So I'm really proud, to call Janine Kalkin a progressive, and I think that she carries the progressive flag very, very well, mm-hmm. better than anyone else, I believe, in the General Assembly.
Right. No, so kudos to her. Again, I spent some time on it. I take this issue very seriously. I mean, I'm a journalist junkie. I'm not a working journalist. I'm not a trained journalist. But, newspapers and media are a big part of my life. And to see what we now appear to have is a, and I hate to make light of this, but we often talk about the prison pipeline. Now we have the journal to the State House pipeline. Because Ms. Bramson is certainly not the first. I mean, it's happened in, I won't say dozens, but, you've got a constant flow between City of Providence government, State of Rhode Island government, the University of Rhode Island. You've got this, essentially, the Providence Journal has now become a trading ground for future politicians.
It's really a bad trend to happen, because I think that it's pretty unethical, right? So you get Ms. Bramson up there in the Senate, and the Senate president or Bill Connolly says, "Hey, Kate, can you call your friend over here and can you get this put in the article, or can you get this taken out of the article?" That is extremely disturbing to me, and I'm not saying that they're engaging in it, but I am kind of saying that they're going to engage in it, because it's obvious. I mean, it's exactly what they want to do, is they want to influence the media, and this is one way to do it, potentially.
Right. I mean, most of the people in the media I know are, they're underpaid, they're overworked, they pursue a very often thankless, controversial, no-win job, because at some point in time, the working press, let's be blunt, to use a vernacular, they piss off everybody. No one's always 100% happy with their coverage, and listen to us tonight. We feel that the Providence Journal has not worked hard to present an alternative viewpoint to the 38 stadium issue, and I doubt they're ever going to call you or me, Dave, and let us know why.
Exactly, and this is really disturbing to me, because I have so much to say about this issue that resonates with the voters that are here in District 8. So we're losing healthcare jobs, right?
Let's jump into your Senate race now. First of all, give us a geographic breakdown, if you will, of District 8. What does it encompass?
Demographically, it is probably 60% white, middle-class people. I won't say voters. I'm not sure about the voting demographics exactly. And the other 40% is immigrant population or minority population. And that's how I tend to look at the world, because it's a world that is divided in that way. So when I go down to the poorer parts of the city, I see a lot of minorities. I see Spanish-speaking people, Creole-speaking people, Portuguese-speaking people. And they're very different from the people up by Slater Park, and that's also part of the district. So you've got a part of the district by Slater Park, which is middle class, professionals. They probably make above $50,000 a year, $50,000 to $150,000 a year. It's not a big part of the city, but it's significant in that they vote and they hold power. And then you've got the other half of the district, or about a half of the district, that is very, very, very low income, and they have a different perspective on how life should be ordered. And it's not only a different perspective culturally, it's a different perspective financially. So that's basically an overview of the district. It goes from Slater Park down to the Attleboro line on Newport Ave, and then from Newport Ave down to the downtown, and it borders the border is the river.
Mm-hmm. Now you're very much a creature of Pawtucket, aren't you? You kind of grew into a citywide fixture, if you will, during, I'll call it PawSox 1.0. But since then, you've been involved in a number of issues. Crash Pawtucket, for example, is something that you were seminal involved in. Talk to us about,
and I actually started
Crash
that. We started that with my opponent, Sandra Cano, who I'm still friendly with, and I was very friendly with her, and we have worked together on small business initiatives.
Mm-hmm. What? I'm not going to ask you for her motivation because this show is about you, not about her. So I'm just going to say this. Like I said, you're a creature of Pawtucket. You're involved in everything there. What's your sense as someone who lives there, works there, breathes there, you have a child there, your life is invested in the city of Pawtucket on a very organic level.
Yes.
What is the morale like right now? This has been a difficult past few months. And with the announcement that one of the pride joys of Pawtucket, the newer pride joys, that is the Bucket Brewery, is closing, what's your sense of the mood right now in Pawtucket?
The mood is really horrible. I've been knocking on doors, which I tend to do for a bunch of different issues, but now for this Senate race. And I've been bringing up all of these issues, and people are upset and they're demoralized especially because of Memorial Hospital. The loss of Memorial Hospital is really hurting residents here, and they're thinking about their future. They're thinking about, particularly senior citizens, they're thinking about if they have a stroke or if they have a heart attack or if they injure themselves during a snowstorm and they have to travel that extra 10, 20, 30 minutes to get care. And they're also telling me that they know for a fact that these other hospitals in the surrounding area have been overwhelmed because the Memorial Emergency Room and ICU has been closed. Mm-hmm. That is the feeling that people have here. They're very upset, they're frustrated, and they're depressed.
Right. You've got the specter of the GAM leaving. You've got the Bucket Brewery closing. Yet, and even with all the challenges and the controversy around the Pawtucket Red Sox, it's clear to me that the reality, not even the prospect, not even the thought, the reality of Memorial Hospital closing, where, quite frankly, I believe a significant part of Pawtucket was born. I mean, this was in the fabric of the community. I think there's a tendency for folks who live outside of Pawtucket who are very Rhode Island hospital-centric, which, by the way, is a wonderful hospital. And the Miriam, if you're on the east side, is, again, a wonderful hospital, great dedicated staffs. Do you think the rest of the state understands how important Memorial Hospital was and is to the folks who are truly, I'll call it, native citizens born in Pawtucket? Do you think folks in the rest of the state get that?
I don't think they get it as well as we get it here, right? We are a proud city. We have our own hospital, and we want our own hospital. It's ours, and we don't want the state or wealthy people coming in and robbing us of it. Mm-hmm. So I think people outside Pawtucket tend to think, well, Providence is only 10 minutes away, but those tend to be younger people. The older folks understand if you have a heart attack or if you have a stroke, particularly a stroke, the amount of time from when you have the stroke to when you get treatment for the stroke is critical to your rehabilitation. So if you take that extra 5, 10, 20 minutes to get to the hospital, then you could be adding a year or two on your rehabilitation, which also makes no sense economically. So Pawtucket is a large enough area, if you include Central Falls, it's such a dense urban area that we really do need a full-scale hospital. Right. So people are very, very upset, and I don't think it's been covered enough in the media, how upset people are and how it affects everyone's lives and quality of life here in Pawtucket.
Right, because, you know, particularly as we enter into this difficult period with the flu and the kind of pressures that it's placing on the principal principal Providence hospitals, you've got this piling on, if you will, that literally, in the case of the current administration, and again, I'm not going to characterize them in any way, shape, or form, but the reality is that the current administration's near-death obsession with a baseball stadium, when Memorial Hospital, part and parcel of the community, the fire department is begging for, you know, capital products and capital support. This is not a situation where, and all one need do is follow at PFD Local 1261, which is the Pawtucket Firefighters Local. Yep. These are not firefighters crying out for more money for themselves, is it? These are firefighters pointing out, in a very public way, but in a very professional way, I might add, the challenges that they're facing every day. And when you read read a tweet that says, you know, currently waiting at Rhode Island Hospital, in a city that's challenged by the size of its fire department and the quality of their equipment, not by the people, but by the physical attributes of it, what kind of signal does that send to the citizens of Pawtucket?
It sends very, very bad signals. It sends a signal to me that the state and the city are incompetent and unable to manage our community. Mm-hmm. So if you take the hospital, for example, we as a state are going to see increased costs in the form of extra rehabilitation, people actually dying because it's taking them longer to get to the hospital, more charges for ambulances for poor people or uninsured people that can't afford it. So the state is allowing this private entity, and I suppose we can call, you know, CNA, is it CNE? Care New England, yes, CNE, a private entity. They're allowing them to extract something that is sorely needed socially in the community and line their own pockets with it. And the state doesn't realize that this is going to cost the taxpayer a lot more money, the way that they're allowing this private entity to manage themselves. And that is why we have regulations. So the state, the hospital had to ask the state for permission to close the birthing center. They had to ask the state for permission to close the ICU. There were hearings, and they were a sham, right? Because the state is not able to stand up for the citizens against wealthy interests. And that's Care New England. Those are the wealthy interests.
Boy, this sounds awfully familiar, by the way. State hearings a sham? I'm shocked.
Yeah, so if you look also at another impact, because a lot of people want to say, oh, it's community, it's social, and then they jump to socialism, and, you know, it's a private company and blah, blah, blah. Well, people dying is a social thing. So we're going to have to spend money to save their lives because we're human beings, and we have to manage that in some form. So that's where I differ a little bit from libertarians and other conservative minds. But if we look at another aspect of this, we've got healthcare jobs, right? Mm-hmm. So nurses that work at Memorial are so upset about losing this hospital and losing their jobs. Right. So we're trading healthcare jobs for popcorn, peanuts, and Cracker Jack jobs. This is a mismanagement on a scale that is just so unbelievable. I think people cannot wrap their heads around it.
Well, what is your hashtag, David?
It's hospitals before stadiums.
Hospitals before stadiums. Wow.
And that is the theme of my campaign in Senate District 8, and it's resonating with the people that I talk with.
I want you to hold that thought for a second because we're going to take a very quick break and come back to you. Folks, if you're just joining us, David Norton is on the phone after a hectic day campaigning and really working on behalf of the citizens of Pawtucket, as he has done for a number of years, right? You know, we're talking about, well, all the issues. Baseball, the Journal, and now really focusing on some of the less publicized issues around the state that are bedeviling Pawtucket. There's a great deal of challenges the city faces that have nothing to do with baseball or Cracker Jack, as David just pointed out. Folks, we are the Coalition, loud and proud, outrage porn-free, civilly disobedient media, broadcasting live on the worldwide Coalition Media Network, here at the GoLocal Live Broadcast Center at 90 Way Boston Street, in the heart of the city we love. This segment is sponsored by Beacon Shipping and Logistics. Of course, beaconshippingandlogistics.com. 1-855-3-SHIP-IT. Affordable worldwide automobile shipping for you. Now, as we always like to say, whether it be for that car you just bought on eBay or that maybe Aunt Sally's old Crown Vic that you're going to give to your kiddo to go to college with, or maybe that minivan that'll be the girlfriend magnet for your high school senior. Maybe it's you're part of a corporate move, a corporate relocation. Imagine the convenience and the comfort of having a nationwide company, Beacon Shipping and Logistics, with nationwide and international reach for automobile shipping, providing you local service based right here out of Warwick, Rhode Island. BeaconShippingAndLogistics.com, 1-855-3-SHIP-IT. Again, we always ask you to, as folks, they support independent media, they deserve your support. The kind of conversations I'm having with David Norton, candidate for Rhode Island State Senate, are controversial in nature. David and I kind of take this for granted, but this is not your conventional media fare. This is not the kind of feel-good, easy-to-digest advertising of a local pizza joint or something like that. These are people willing to be on the bleeding edge of the challenges we face as Rhode Islanders. So please support them. 1-855-3-SHIP-IT, beaconshippingandlogistics.com. Again, joining us on the phone after a hectic day of campaigning, and it's been a tumultuous day. It's been a difficult week or two if you're involved in the Paw Sox, ongoing Paw Sox frittata, as one Vincent A. Buddy Cianci would have called it, is David Norton. He's running for Senate. He's running in the special election for the seat vacated by then Senator Jamie Doyle, who left for personal reasons. Now, David, you had initially announced you were going to run for mayor, and then, clearly, to those of us not in the inner circle, Mr. Doyle's announcement caught us all by surprise. There is a three-way primary. Our goal today is to really talk about your thoughts, not to publicize your opponents. But what was the motivating factor for you in deciding not to run for mayor, but in fact to take on this political challenge?
Well, I was actually going to run. I had planned to run for state rep.
Oh, that's right. Sorry?
Not mayor.
Mm-hmm.
Yep, state rep of District 60.
Right.
So I decided I was dead set on running for District 60.
Mm-hmm.
And I decided to step in because I saw that one of my opponents was a super Paw Sox supporter, right? All the way. Would have voted yes along with the Senate. And she's running to be a senator in District 8. And then my other opponent had initially told me that he was against the taxpayer-funded stadium and for a referendum, and across the board, it met the standard of no, the very strong standard of no, we don't want a stadium, no taxpayer money at all. But he flip-flopped on that just after I had sent out an email and messaging to people that were involved in the Paw Sox opposition. So when that happened, I decided I have to get into this race and I have to make it about the stadium. I have to make it about Memorial Hospital, and that hospitals must come before stadiums. I really felt strongly that if one of these two candidates were elected to the Senate, that they were going to rubber stamp the stadium deal. They were going to be a yes vote very easily on the stadium deal, whatever that deal was. And that was going to set a trend for them for the rest of the time that they were in the Senate. That is how they were going to behave. And I thought that was horrible, and I couldn't let that happen, especially at this time with this issue.
Right. Yeah, and this really represents kind of a line in the sand. Our entire state is gearing itself more and more to depending on this sort of crony corporatism, this write a big check to a company and kind of hope it works out without really a lot of forethought and with really a lot of post-game analysis. The notion that we as a state lock ourselves in for 30 years to a commitment that I believe could be easily abridged by the current Paw Sox ownership at a time of their convenience, given the political winds here in the state. This is a line in the sand, isn't it?
Oh, it absolutely is, Pat. And I really want to emphasize that this is a line in the sand that I'm not going back on. Right. So there isn't going to be, if I'm elected senator, then I am not going to vote in favor of a stadium that involves any taxpayer money at all. And I might even go a little further and ask the Paw Sox owners to apologize to the people of Pawtucket and people of Rhode Island for the hell that they've been putting us through the past couple of years. It's very, very upsetting, especially when you look at Memorial Hospital, these two issues. You can't separate the two issues. It's so crystal clear how we treat wealthy people and how we treat poor people. And that's the line in the sand that I really want to draw in Pawtucket. And if my opponent wins, and my opponent is, her campaign is being run by a paid Paw Sox consultant. So this truly is this truly is going to be the first referendum on the Paw Sox issue. And they've got a whole lot of money. They've got a whole lot of volunteers. And what they don't have is good ideas. And what they don't have is a good moral stance to go with.
Right. Yeah, it's disappointing again to see someone, you're talking about the city councilwoman, someone with her potential for leadership to kind of fall sway to this sort of the false god of cronyism. And it really, as a progressive Democrat, I'm not quite sure how you rationalize it. It's whether you're, I'll use my word, not yours. I'll use the word litmus test. Whether you're a libertarian or a progressive Democrat, cronyism is an absolute litmus test, isn't it?
It sure is. And, the fact that the first fundraiser for my opponent's campaign is being held at a country club is it's just almost too much for me, right? So this is a candidate that is probably already bought and sold. And I like my opponent personally, but politically, no way. I'm going to bring the fight to my opponent, and she's going to have all the resources of the wealthy Paw Sox and all their consultants and all that they can do. And all I'm going to have is this idea that we ought to put hospitals before stadiums. And I've challenged both of my opponents to a debate, and I haven't heard a single word. I haven't heard a peep out of them.
Well, if one of your opponents may or may not remember that the coalition a few years ago was the only, and this is going back, about 3 or 4 years ago, was the only media forum to have at that time all 4 candidates for Congressional District 1 on the air at the same time. And of course, I'm talking about the time David Cicilline was the incumbent. Mr. Fecteau was running against him. And there were 2 gentlemen running for the Republican primary. And the coalition was the host of the only time on media where all 4 of them appeared at once. Mr. Cicilline at the time was kind enough to call in from the District of Columbia. So I'm going to make that same offer right now, and if you want to run to the bank with it, David, and promote it, I will get the setup here for on a Friday evening for the three of you in the Democratic primary to debate the issues. Minus the drama.
Absolutely, Pat. I certainly accept in any time, anywhere, under any condition.
Right.
I will debate both of them, and I also would like to invite my Republican opponents, because there are two that are going to face off in a primary here, and there's also an independent. So I want to debate all of the candidates, if possible. I suppose we'd have to go first through the Democratic primary, decide who wins, and then go on to a debate with the Republican winner and the independent winner. But I think there's a lot of value in debating the issues that confront us. So saying things like jobs, 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 I want to grow the economy, I want to move Pawtucket forward, I want to move Rhode Island forward, it's ridiculous. I'm talking about hospitals and stadiums and transfer stations. I'm talking about policy. I'm talking about residents. And they're talking about empty political messaging. It's really disturbing to me, and that's why I want to have a debate.
Right. You're the other opponent, besides Ms. Cato, initially, and I'll just use my editorialization, initially anti-stadium, now has issued a statement, and I admire him on a personal level. He brings a lot of value to the equation, but all of a sudden has morphed into this sort of, I'm interested in what's good for the economy, what's good, this sort of statement, non-statement that has become the soup du jour, if you will, of politicians in Rhode Island for the last few years. And to,
yeah,
I mean, your electorate, and as I've gotten over the last year or so to know people in Pawtucket, on a personal level, despite the challenges the city may face, and despite some of the cliches about the bucket, I have found your constituents, your potential constituents, to be as well-informed, involved, connected to their local politics and their local situation as or more than just about any community in this state. They're smart people. They, regardless of their own personal economics, they're wicked smart people. They've got an intrinsic feel for the community, and they've got a serious case now of trying, of wanting to do the right thing as opposed to the wrong thing.
Exactly. Yep. And they have a good nose for BS, right? So the car tax, for example, everybody in Pawtucket knows that the car tax is extremely unfair. They know that the valuations are unfair. They know that the car tax is too high, and they're beginning to accept my message to them, my economic message to them, which is sort of a libertarian economic message, I suppose, is that when you eliminate taxes, a tax, you put more money into the local economy. Yeah. And people spend it in the local economy, and that's what grows the economy. So what's happening to Pawtucket is Pawtucket's paying 5.3% car tax, a rate of 5.3% in Pawtucket, but Jamestown is paying 1.4%. So the amount of economic activity that you could create in Pawtucket if you just put that burden not on the Pawtucket taxpayers, but on the state of Rhode Island to manage the system and make the car tax zero, or you have a high exemption, which I would favor. You would see a lot of economic growth and a lot of economic activity, but we're not seeing that. And Pawtucket residents know that we're not seeing that, and they're frustrated with it, but they're so beaten down by it, I think, that a lot of those people don't vote. So what we end up seeing is people that don't mind paying the car tax because they make $100,000 or $150,000 and they can afford it. So they vote, right? And the people that are suffering don't vote as much as the people who are not suffering. So we have this huge imbalance that's been created in Pawtucket and all over Rhode Island. So we have these senators voting against the wishes of the people for the Paw Sox Stadium, for example.
Mm-hmm. Well, the tax structure is so damn regressive in this state. You know, quite frankly, one of the simplest ways to gin up economic activity and to bring money back into the state would be to lower the sales tax. And quite frankly, the impact on the average lower income household would be almost instant. The ability to stretch the consumer dollar and to keep that consumer dollar in Rhode Island would have a substantial positive impact on the economy almost overnight. I refer to it as the emergency break glass situation. If we could simply keep, you know, the purchase of gasoline, the purchases of consumer goods, and allow people to own cars affordably in the city, so that if they have to work in far-flung situations, they can get to them. You're talking about almost instantly improving the quality of life for the average resident of the city of Pawtucket, almost instantly. I mean, literally within a matter of days, their paycheck goes further. They spend more locally. They support local businesses, and are then in a position to grow and prosper, and to have a higher quality of life. And
and they don't lose their car registration. They don't have to break the law. So what happens in Pawtucket is a lot of people, they'll buy a car and they're not aware that they have to pay the car tax a year later.
Right.
So they get a bill for $500, $600, $700 all of a sudden, and they can't afford to pay it. So then what happens is they have late payments and late fees and interest fees to the city of Pawtucket for not paying it, and their car registration is suspended. So they have to drive around dirty. That happens in Pawtucket and Providence because they simply can't afford to pay the car tax. So then you have this multiplier effect because of this regressive tax policy, where people are losing their registration, and if they get caught, they face potentially losing their license. And if they get caught again, then, you know, it becomes court fees and fines and just this whole horrible situation that will never go away for them.
Right. No, it's I call it a circle of economic violence. The number of people lower, and here's a way I phrase it, and I don't enjoy saying this. It's awfully expensive to be a member of the working poor here in Rhode Island. It's awfully expensive for all of the reasons you just described. There's a circle of economic violence that takes place to the point, someone I admire a lot refers to it as economic racism, which puts people permanently in this sort of sub-state where they're operating on the borderline of existence. The sheer number of people, what I found astonishing, because I know people in this business, the sheer number of people who use rideshare services to get to work, who will spend $10 to $20 a day in car fare to get to a job that may only be paying them $10 to $13 an hour, is horrifying. And yet we're a state that spends an enormous amount of money on public transportation. We spend an enormous amount of money on roads, and we have an enormous failure on our hands. And you know, at some point in time, the status quo cannot continue. It's simply not working for a significant part of our population. You know, David, I refer to the 1% in the state of Rhode Island as not the few oligarchs left here, because most of the rich are fleeing, but this professional bureaucracy that exists in old Brezhnev Soviet Union days. They called it the apparatchiks, and I probably brutalized that pronunciation. But those are the people who work for the government, who could shop at the American or European stores, who got paid in hard currency, and were able to live protected, exalted lives, had the best apartments, and had health care. And sound familiar? You know, under Gina Raimondo, that's your typical $100,000 plus, middle income, no account, no responsibility bureaucrat. We are creating our own mini Soviet Union here, because of the rise in the importance and the ascendancy of the state, while at the same time driving people who are desperately looking to get away from their lives of quiet desperation into the ground. They're literally killing them. It's
yeah,
horrifying.
I think, yep, as a progressive Democrat, I would probably have a different take on that and how to manage the economy and public transportation and taxes and stuff. But we're not dealing with a European situation, a European economy here in Pawtucket or Rhode Island. So a lot of the progressives in Rhode Island would love to see a system like they have in Denmark, right? But Denmark is a completely different situation in terms of progressive policy. So they have like a 200% car tax that you have to pay because they want to discourage people from buying cars. But you can get to within 50 feet of any location that you want in most areas in Denmark using public transportation. And you can get transportation passes for poor people and stuff like that. So they've managed to have this advanced, socialized, a mix of socialism and capitalism. That's a really advanced economy. And here in Rhode Island, I think we have not two sides. I don't want to say the libertarian is the opposite of the progressive because we agree on about half of the stuff. But I think that we should have debates like this, right? We should have debates like this in politics because it helps us understand each other, and it brings forth better policy. Like if you take the bus pass issue, for example. So I met a lot of people in the soup kitchen when I worked on the bus pass issue, opposing the policy of taking the bus passes away from low-income and disabled residents. Right. I supported restoring the bus passes because I found that a lot of residents and a lot of RIPTA riders couldn't afford 50 cents, right? I met a guy in the soup kitchen, and he told me, Dave, I can't afford 50 cents to pay for the bus, so I have to beg for money.
Oh, I can remember having conversations with the executive director of the Pawtucket Soup Kitchen, who was commenting on almost an instant physical decline in the state of her customers, if you will, or constituency.
Yes, yes.
I mean, almost
Adrian,
overnight.
She's fantastic.
Right, almost overnight, you started to see people almost instantly become physically more frail and sick, because, and an irony I'll take to my grave. Right around that time, the fine folks at RIPTA found the money to have a subsidy to take people to, no kidding, I don't know if you remember this or you caught this one, but they found a subsidy that so you could have free bus rides to, guess where? McCoy Stadium for a baseball game. So and fortunately that all came to a quick, once that was exposed, we had some resolution for Adrian and her constituency, but I was ready to start setting up a food kitchen on selected baseball games so that, folks could find a way to get to a 3 squares. Let's not forget, for all the folks who might listen to this show now or in the future at coalitionradio.us, if you think we're exaggerating, published results just a few weeks ago that Rhode Island has the highest poverty rate in New England.
I believe it. Yep, absolutely. If you look at other issues, you look at Medicaid and the governor's proposed budget. She wants to increase Medicaid co-pays from $2.50 to, I believe, $8.50. That's going to affect my community in a very, very big way. Right. Because if there are people that don't have 50 cents, there are people that don't have $2.50. I mean, they literally never have 50 cents.
Right.
They just don't.
No, I'm with you, my friend. It's for folks like you and I who are out and about in a variety of communities. On a given day, you and I will be in some of the wealthiest parts of Rhode Island, and another day we'll be in some of the poorest. You see firsthand the disparities that exist. Again, you and I will agree that we have different ways to remedy those disparities, But the central premise here is that we agree that there is a grotesque disparity, just grotesque level of opportunity for people at lower income levels to rise out of, and it's largely because of a failed government that your opponents, I believe, seek to perpetuate. And that's a takeaway from today.
Yeah. And there's different models in the world. Like I mentioned, Denmark is a very progressive, highly taxed, kind of socialist country, but there's a good mix of capitalism in there. And, you know, the public transportation is owned by the government and it's managed by the government and the people are satisfied with it. But then you have another country like Japan, all of their trains are private. It's all privatized, right? And they have the best public transportation system in the world. I mean, they've had bullet trains since 1969 that go 150 miles an hour.
Right.
So I'm not, I think that we both have very good ideas from the progressive Democrat perspective and from the libertarian perspective, and we can mix it up and find what works perfectly well, because there are all sorts of examples in the world where both models work,
right, and
they work well.
Absolutely. Well, how can folks find out about your campaign? Give us the websites and give us the information, and you know, where can we expect to see Dave Norton near you?
All right, so everyone can go to electdavidnorton.com. That's my website. My Facebook page is Elect David Norton State Senate. My Twitter handle is Kobe English. I'm not that active on Twitter. I'm more active on Facebook. And you will definitely see me in an upcoming video that I've made with one of my good friends, Paul Roselli, who is running for governor.
Yep.
And I agree with Paul Roselli on most issues. I haven't found an issue really that I disagree with him on. I think he'd make a fine governor, and you know, we've been keeping in touch and helping each other out a little bit, and I'm hoping to help him in his campaign for governor. So anyway, we made this video, and that'll be coming out pretty soon. It'll be on my YouTube channel, which I haven't created yet, but that is also named electdavidnorton.com. I mean, Elect David Norton, I guess it's at YouTube. I'm not really sure about YouTube that well. And you'll be seeing me all over the place. Believe it.
Absolutely.
You will.
David, I have no doubt of that whatsoever. Folks, David Norton, he's running for York, Rhode Island State Senate. Now, let me see if I get this right. District 6?
District 8.
District 8.
Senate
Jeez.
District 8.
I have an issue with this. My next guest will attest to this. Representative Lancia, after a while, pre-med, pre-law, yikes. Too many districts, too many of this, too many of that. It's this patchwork quilt of fiefdoms and constituencies across the state of Rhode Island that makes me a little nuts at times. But he is running for it. He has been a warrior against crony corporatism since this issue raised its ugly head years ago. It seems like decades ago, and back when we were talking about things like skeponomics. Folks, regardless of your political stripe, it is worth talking to David. It is worth engaging with David. Take a look at his website, and I think you'll find a public spirit there. I think you'll find a spirit of cooperation and a willing to work with folks. It's been a joy to work with him in opposing this stadium. And again, David, thank you for joining us tonight here on the Coalition.
Thank you very much, Pat. I really appreciate it.
All right. Folks, David Norton, candidate for Senate District 8 in the special election, given the resignation of the current senator. He is running in a Democratic primary, and then we'll move on to a special general election, which will then repeat itself this summer when those seats are up for election again in November. Folks, you've been listening to the Coalition on the Worldwide Coalition Media Network, broadcasting live at the Worldwide Coalition Broadcast Center, at the GoLocal Live Broadcast Center, here in the heart of the city we love, 90 Way Boston Street. Joining me in just a minute or two, he just came into the studio, another frequent offender, Representative Bob Lancia. He's going to be talking about an issue that we raised here on the Coalition, and you can rewatch on video our interview with the folks behind the Inspector General debate. Facebook.com/The Coalition Radio, on the Mighty Twitter at Coalition_radio, and again, coalitionradio.us, where this shows and other shows live in perpetuity on our YouTube page or our past show page. Folks, stay tuned. We'll be right back. And we are back. We are the Coalition, loud and proud, outrage, porn-free, civilly disobedient media, broadcasting live on the worldwide Coalition Media Network at the GoLocal Live Broadcast Center, 90 Weybosset Street, in the heart of the city we love, Providence, Rhode Island. It's always at this point of the show, it's one of my favorite moments of the show, I take my Yacht Club soda break. Now, anyone who's been watching the first two segments know that I'm coming off a cold, so I cheated. I've had two. This will be my second. I started out the show because grapefruit. Great flavor. A little tangy, a little different. Not overwhelmingly sweet, like so many of these artificially fructose injected chemical experiments that they call soda that they serve in cheap plastic bottles. Nope, it was Yacht Club. So it was natural flavors with real cane sugar in spring quality water. Right here, and I won't try the pronunciation, I think it's Winuskatucket, something like that, at scenic Centerdale, Rhode Island. But again, the big game, we've got a week off from football, so you're probably doing work around the house, but the big game is coming in next week, and you will spend an inordinate amount of time and money putting out for your friends or bringing to your friends all sorts of treats and baked goods and casseroles and hot dishes, and part of the now annual tradition of the New England Patriots being in the Super Bowl. So, as I always say, don't cheap out. Don't bring the junk in the plastic bottle that's straight out of a refinery. You know, you've got one of America's finest boutique sodas right here in Rhode Island. Of course, I'm talking about Yacht Club. They were a boutique soda before there was a boutique soda. 100+ years, it is the official beverage of the state of Rhode Island. See, I've almost got this down now. There you go. Anyone who listens to the shows knows that sarsaparilla is my favorite flavor. Folks, grace your table with the very best. Support local Rhode Island businesses. Support local Rhode Islanders. That's been our theme tonight. It's our ongoing theme at the Coalition. First taste. Oh. Damn, that's good. When you talk nonstop for 3 hours, and don't think for a moment that when I leave this show that I stop talking, you need something special. YachtClubBottling.works.com. You'll find all the links in every one of our broadcasts. What's been the mantra tonight? Support local businesses that support independent media. There's an element of bravery in supporting the type of programming that we do here. We are viciously anti-establishment. We routinely challenge the status quo, and we put forth the challenge to our elected officials on a daily basis to the Coalition. These folks deserve your support. And by the way, it's the very best soda you'll ever have. Joining us live in studio now is someone who truly qualifies as a repeat offender. But just a few weeks ago, we had Mr. Burbrick on. Of course, he is the gentleman behind the Inspector General's movement. An Inspector General himself, from his military days, he brought forward to the Coalition a pretty detailed analysis of the advantages of the idea, the current legislation, the economics, and the benefits. You can see that show on our YouTube page, again, linked at coalitionradio.us. This is an issue that has taken on a great deal of resonance in the last few weeks. There is a Twitter thread that was started just about, it seems like about 2 weeks ago, that is still ongoing, still exploding, with ideas, questions, challenges surrounding this issue. Given some of the atrocities that Rhode Island government has been involved in, and I use the word atrocities intentionally, it is clear that the time for this discussion has come. In fact, this is an issue that has arrived in our doorstep. In a uniquely bipartisan moment, it would appear that there's legislation emerging from the Rhode Island General Assembly. I say uniquely because the type of cooperation that's being exhibited by a number of representatives is really a model that needs to be followed. The only thing missing is someone with the word L in front of them, but that's coming soon, I believe. This legislation, and my guest, Representative Bob Lancia, jump in if I get this wrong, essentially has been co-authored, co-written by yourself. You actually jumped on this bandwagon early, about a year ago. Now Representative Evan Shanley has joined, and now a coalition has been created that have included Representative Mendonca, Representative Maura Walsh. Did I miss anybody?
Representative Camille Vella-Wilkinson.
Camille Vella-Wilkinson. So you've got a geographic spread, you've got a party spread, and even within those parties, you've got a philosophical spread between folks who are acting in goodwill and coming together. And this seems to be one of those situations where folks realize there's an issue that needs to be addressed, and we'll let the credit and all that wait till later until we solve the problem. So congratulations for what appears to be a consensus emerging about the need for an Inspector General. So give us a little background, again, to people who might listen to this for the first time, about your district, where you're from, some of the issues that you're involved in, and then let's get right into your take on the IG. Interestingly enough, you come from a very strong military background.
Yes.
And so one of the questions I'll ask you later on is your experience dovetail neatly with Mr. Burbrick's experience. But kind of give us another quick, who is Bob Lancia, and let's get right into it.
Sure. Bob Lancia, I'm the state representative from District 16 Cranston. That would be the Garden City, Glen Hills, all the way over Elmwood Avenue, almost over to Parkview Middle School near the entrance of Roger Williams Park. Mm-hmm. Been in 3 years. I'm in my 4th year. And prior to this, I was a Navy chaplain. I'm now currently a shed on my shoulder on the way to Iraq with the Marines, so I'm a disabled, 100% disabled vet. I am, after 2 tries for state rep, 1 for city council. On the 4th try, again, Abraham Lincoln School of Politics, lose till you win. On the 4th try, I did win, and recently elected. So again, I'm in my 2nd term.
Great. So you broached this issue, I guess, about a year or so ago. Give us a little bit of a history and background. What brought you to this table, and then where you've gone from there.
Yeah, I mean, essentially, I made a point early on that my hallmark while I was in the General Assembly was going to be finance. I wanted to focus on finance. I wanted to be known as a financial guy. I don't sit on the finance committee, but that is what I am focused on. And it started with something as simple. We've talked about this previously. Started something as the beach fees. The beach fees. How much were we collecting? How much we were spending? And found out because Constitution says that access to the beach should be free. And we were charging, and they say, well, we're not charging you to go to the beach, we're charging you to park at the beach. So it took me about a year and a half. I got the figures from the DEM. They were collecting $3.3 million. It only cost $2.2. And my bill didn't pass, but the speaker said, you know what? I think we can reduce the beach fees by a little bit. So that was a small victory. I also have been fighting about the 911 issue. That dollar charge on our landlines, our cell phones, supposedly goes to 911, which ceased to exist as a separate entity in '09. And they're still collecting $15 million a year out of hardworking Rhode Islanders' pockets, when in fact it only costs $5.4 million to run the program, which now falls under public safety, under the purview of the head of the state police. So about a year ago, I picked up on the IG issue from Dan Riley, former representative from the East Bay, and I called him up. I wanted to introduce the bill, and he introduced me to Mr. Ray Berevic, and we've been working for 2 years now on this bill. And at the time last year, Evan Shanley, representative newly elected from Warwick, put in another bill, a bill, and his bill was for an IG as well. The only thing we differed in was who picks the IG. He initially suggested it perhaps would be the speaker. Mine would called for the governor, lieutenant governor, secretary of state, and then to remove be the governor, lieutenant governor, attorney general. Unanimous vote. And as the session went on, I did testify. Mr. Barrett testified with me, but the bill did not go anywhere. However, toward the end of the session, I was approached by Representative Shanley, who said he would love to work with me on the bill, because during amendments, I tried to get it into the budget, but again, it was defeated in a floor vote. And I was approached by him, and then also Maura Walsh, who represented from Providence. Right. And we all just agreed that we would like to work together on this bill. And so we've got whatever you want to say, a mainline Democrat, a progressive Democrat, and a Republican. And I was excited about the possibility. And then I'm very dear friends with Camille Vella Wilkinson. We're both fellow Navy vets. And we've worked on a lot of veterans issues together. Invited her to come aboard. And Ken Mendonca, newly elected, took Dan Riley's seat, newly elected from the East Bay. A wonderful gentleman. He sits on the Finance Committee. Sharp gentleman, and I've told him that on several occasions. So we've really created a little bit of a coalition. We pulled Gene Barros in from the Central Falls, Pawtucket area, who also was part of Evan Shanley's bill last year. Dennis Canario, also from the East Bay. And so, I mean, we feel like it's building. We feel like it's building. And essentially, I think we all see the need. Last year, $60 million deficit. This year, around $200 million. Right. And, the thing for me is, when we went to balance the budget last year, $60 million deficit, they scooped $12.7 million out of the Energy Efficiency Fund. And again, I've been one of the few reps or senators that's testified at all the National Grid rate increase hearings. And that was a travesty to me. Hardworking Rhode Islanders, again, just like the 911 fee, you've got something on a bill that you receive, monthly, that you think is going one place, and it winds up going someplace else to balance the budget. Plus, the governor, had to come up with the $60 million. She had to come up with 25, and one of them is an early buyout for state employees. So it's a lot of sleight of hand. Now I've got a preview of this year's budget, and so it's a cheat sheet from one of the gentlemen in my office, one of our workers, and now we'll always looking at some scoops this year. Scoops They want to scoop 2.6 million from Departments of Business Regulation and Health excess funds from medical marijuana regulation, 3 million from the Rhode Island Resource Recovery Corporation, and 5 million from Rhode Island Housing. And I'm sure that's at the end of the list. That's the start of the list.
Huh.
So they're already looking.
Run through those again, because they really.
Sure.
It's hideous. It needs to be.
2.6 million from the Departments of Business Regulation and Health, the Health Department's excess funds from medical marijuana regulation, 3 million from the Rhode Island Resource Recovery Corporation, and 5 million from Rhode Island Housing.
Wow.
Now that's the start. I'm sure that's not the end.
And that's from Governor Armando.
Yep, this is her budget, and this is a cheat sheet. I'm going to leave this with you because it's about 8 or 9 pages. I'm sure you'll enjoy it. The other thing I brought you this evening is something that Mr. Barabic put together for me for our group, an information briefing that we could potentially give to Speaker Mattiello regarding the Inspector General. And I'm going to leave this with you tonight, a very nice presentation. One thing I want to highlight, Mr. Barabic says, why in Rhode Island? Again, these are his sheets. Legacy of improper spending. Imagine that.
Yeah.
Legacy of improper spending.
I'm shocked.
Public mistrust.
Not from me.
And he says the Rhode Island per capita spending per taxpayer in Rhode Island currently stands at $8,781 per taxpayer in Rhode Island. The national average is only $6,794, over close to $2,000 less nationally. Mm-hmm. And Florida, again, remains the lowest at $3,921. Now, there are 12 states that have an IG right now. We could be the 13th. 9 of those 12 states, because they have an IG, their tax rate is below the national average of $67.94. And again, you had Mr. Barabic in, and he made the point that in Florida, they don't have one IG. They have one in all 26 departments, giving them the lowest per capita tax rate in the country. Wow. Imagine that. Now, I think this is certainly worth our time, worth our effort, and we're going to really work together as a team to try to get this passed.
Now, let me bring to your attention some of the concerns. You've been part of this Twitter, I don't know what to call it, a Twitter war. The Twitterverse in Rhode Island politics was partially taken over this week.
Yes.
By conversations from all sides.
Absolutely.
Remarkably, from people who had thousands of Twitter followers, and there were people who had a few dozen Twitter followers. Mm-hmm. It was uniquely egalitarian.
Yes.
Some of the concerns that bubbled up in the current legislation that I'll call it the consensus legislation.
Yes.
Between the Gang of Five. You like that? You see, you come out with these nice warm fuzzy things. It's the Gang of Five, right? So the Gang of Five, who appoints it in the current legislation?
Well, we did a lot of talking, and interestingly, you've had, I don't know, have you had Simeon on your show, the new director of Public Veterans Affairs?
No.
Wonderful gentleman. His last job was at the War College. He's now the head of Veterans Affairs. To pick Simeon, it was a group of 9 individuals. That was the party. Mm-hmm. That was the team. And we all decided as a group, we wanted to also have a team of 9, odd number of course. Mm-hmm. We decided the 5 general offices, the majority and minority leader from the House, mm-hmm. and the majority and minority leader from the Senate. For a total of 9. So that 9...
So Pat Morgan would be invited this time?
Yes, we would be invited this time, yes. So that's what we're putting in. Mm-hmm. And we also decided that it would take a 2/3 vote, 6 of the 9, to remove the IG.
Interesting. So no late night coups.
No, not at all.
And if something gets hot, you've got co-equal branches of government, or say co-equal branches within the legislative wing of the government. Yes. So okay, run through the 9 again, just to
sure. The 5 general offices.
Right.
The majority and minority leader from the House, and the majority and minority leader from the Senate.
So you guaranteed a minority presence.
Yes.
The executive branch will not be able to run amok with this.
Mm-hmm.
The AG's office will not be able to bury anyone in this.
Mm-hmm.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Interesting. Is this type of functionality is under the purview of the General Assembly? So the General Assembly, you don't have to go constitutional with this. This is truly an appointed position. So by definition, the General Assembly has a full purview in the full sway to do this thing.
That is my understanding. That was my understanding last year. Nothing was raised in opposition when we brought it on the floor, so I think we're on solid ground.
Right.
The other thing that we talked about was paying for the position.
That was, the next concern is because it's interesting when an idea hits like this. You talked about my word is cynicism. You talked about distrust. The first reaction that you get, the first visceral reaction by a lot of people was that, oh, good, how much are we going to give a pension to this guy for? That you can see it, you can hear it coming. And listen, no one is more anti-government bureaucracy than I am. But let's talk about cost effectiveness, because you do have a real issue here. Right now, the executive branch is completely out of control with their spending. We had to listen to Representative Serpa's discussion last night, a rather frank discussion with the head of DCY, was the child advocate for the DCYF, talk about, I think her terms were drowning. Yes. I think the drowning word came up.
Yes.
And clearly, staffing is an issue there. Yet our governor gone crazy. The executive branch at this point is kind of like a bad spring break movie. Kind of a spring break movie meets the one of those Friday the 13th. You've got the out of control bureaucrat tripping as they run away from the guy with the axe. So they're hiring people. People are incredibly frustrated at this point. The average working Rhode Islander, which seems to be the theme tonight, it's the theme always, is that you've got a lot of folks not making a lot of money in the state who are hanging on for dear life and are going to be sensitive about any of these six-figure positions. Yet at the same time, having spent time with Ray and having researched the issue, it's clear that you need to hire someone who's got some real creds when it comes to line of reporting, business structure, communication, financial accounting. This is not your typical hack job, is it? I mean,
no, it's not.
Someone either needs to be from a military background, or be a CPA,
yes,
or have that type of experience. So let's talk about the money, given that backdrop that I've just painted.
Yeah, in the legislation as currently constituted, it provides that the General Assembly will obviously pay for it. But I have to add this because we're on the Twitter. Bobby Natalillo, running for United States Senate,
right,
had a great suggestion, I thought.
The license plates.
Yes. Put a single license plate on the car, we could save $2 million. What a great idea. What a great idea.
I got another one if you eliminate that. It's just us talking, that whole lieutenant governor thing. Because let's just say, my words, what's more useful, a front license plate or lieutenant governor? Front license plate, lieutenant governor, front license plate. Anyway, then you'd have a few $1 million.
Well, the lieutenant governor's office is, I think, 1.1 million.
Right.
So that, I mean, obviously, if Mr. Healy, that was his big goal, obviously, when he was running for a while, but that would eliminate $1.1 million, which certainly could become the vehicle for the Inspector General and also the possible office space as well.
Yeah, and the parking spot too.
The parking spot too.
Let's get serious here. All right, so there are some great ways to fund this, but overall, Ray was pretty compelling in terms of the kind of cost savings. So why don't you focus a little bit on the potential cost savings here?
Well, I mean, he was. I rewatched some of the things that he was talking about, and essentially we're talking, like he said, this isn't where the person's prosecuting or investigating. He's just trying to find ways to fraud and abuse. And one of the things you mentioned, for instance, was when he worked as an IG, the automobile fleet, for instance, how much money could be saved with that?
Right.
Duplication of services, and let's be real. A state of this size, I thought I was alarmed last year when it was $9.2 billion budget.
Right.
Now they want $9.4 billion, and again, New Hampshire, 5.7, Maine 7.1, Delaware 4.1, 9.4, a state of 900,000 people. We also have 14,000 state employees. I was talking to a dear friend from Utah, 9 million people. We're 1/10 the size. They have 21,000 state employees. Wow. I mean, so you think about this, and there's a lot of hardworking state employees, no doubt about it. But you know, I remember a fellow rep. In fact, I was just talking to someone yesterday. We had one fellow rep was grousing about the governor bringing a lot these high-paid lobbyists from not lobbyists, but experts from out of state. Salaries 150 to 200,000.
Right.
This representative made the point that that a state job was also public service sometimes too, and he said maybe they shouldn't. Maybe there should be a cap of $100,000. Imagine if you put a cap of 100,000. We could pay for this position with something like that.
One always have to wonder about the negotiating skills of the current governor, because I have this mental image of someone coming in and saying, man, if I could get like 80, 90 grand for this job, I'll be set. You know, bennies, perks, pensions, blah, 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 blah. And he or she's about to walk in and say, and answer, you know, the time-honored question, you know, at any interview is, what type of compensation are you looking for? And the governor saying, oh, I'll settle for 80, I'd like to work for $80,000, $90,000. The governor, you don't have to do that. We'll take care of you. This incredible largesse compared to relative salaries. You know, at some point, I'm hoping House Finance will actually do an analysis, not only just of the overall overhead, if you will, of what it costs to run the executive branch and all the different jobs that are controlled out of there, but I think we need to be analyzing what a department head of this size gets in Rhode Island versus, say, Massachusetts or Utah. You know, not only is Utah significantly bigger population-wise, it's enormously bigger. We're probably roughly the size of Greater Salt Lake here.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And so we do all of this. We're quite ready to commit to study anything that's relatively good government, but we're willing to willy-nilly go out and hire anybody at just about. Does anybody there negotiate?
You know, when former governor, I've got to give former Governor Chafee credit. I mean, he had a semi-freeze on, you know, as he left office, and I mean, I was happy about that. And I remember the first year that the governor did her address. She said, you know, I'm getting an 8% raise. I'm going to take 3 and leave 5 on the table, something to that effect. And you know, I honestly wish she had taken the whole 8%, because after that, you know, she started hiring. She took the freeze off, and you know, just in the first 6 months, I had my office tracking the executive branch. She raised her personnel and benefits by at least 50% in the first 6 months. You know, and you know, there were some, obviously they made a few necessary hires, but I mean, I think, you know, I hear you know, some other folks, they talk about the number of publicists, you know, that
right.
That the governor employs. You know, these kinds of things. How many do we need? And these kind of things. And again, we got frontline state employees who are in the trenches, DCYF, tax division, 911, all these different places where they can't get enough people, you know, to do the actual work.
Right.
And it is destroying, you know, our families, our children, you know, and you know, people that are just trying to get business done. It's very, very unsettling. It really is.
Well, I mean, today we were treated to the notion that a prominent Providence Journal reporter, it was disclosed by Catherine Gregg in a separate tweet, would be making $121,000 as a policy director. I'm a policy wonk. Dominic, I'll do it for 75, and I think I can do just as good a job. You hear, Dominic? The offer's on the table. I'll wait for the phone call.
It's I think a top to bottom review. You know, Catherine Gregg did the article about the IG a week ago now in the paper. I had so many people coming up to me and saying, "Great idea, great bill." You know, that's what people were saying. And on top of that, you know, I felt gratified. I had a gentleman who is a major figure in Providence in the business world, we were at an event together, and we were talking. He came up to me, he said, great bill, Rep. And I said, he said, you know, wouldn't it be great if we got a white piece of paper? He said, and just start it over. Let's start listing the essential needs and go from there. A total reinvention of government. And I was like, wow.
Jonathan Keith, who is not announced, but essentially announced that he's going to be challenging Hannah Gallo again. And by the way, if you haven't seen it, I posted it on the Facebook page, and it's on the Coalition Radio YouTube page. Ms. Gallo's speech to the Senate, confirming her support of the legislation enabling 38 Stadium. And I'm going to put up the wall, is your coalition wall here, because this is not your responsibility for what I'd say. It was the most incoherent, babbling nonsense that I've heard in a long time. And you're talking to someone who spends a lot of time up at Halitosis Hall. So, yikes. I had to bring that up just because, I'm a product of a Catholic education, K through 8, and I learned how to diagram sentences, all right? I tried to diagram the sentences in that speech. Holy shnikes. Anyhow, Jonathan Keith advocates zero-based budgeting. What those two processes, even if that happens, say, once every 4 years, a zero-based budgeting technique, even if that reassessment takes place, people then take stock of the fundamental role of government, which I believe is little or none, and are forced to confront their largesse. And when I say largesse, in the case of the General Assembly, it's not their personal largesse, it's their largesse using OPM, other people's money. And that review, if mandated, God, amazing every year, but let's take, say, every 4 years, a true reassessment of what the role of government is and what direction we're taking place in. These are, by the way, these are reviews. You know, you mentioned there's this gentleman who was successful in business. These are reviews that take place all the time in business.
That's right.
There's a great book out. It talks about wondering what your why is. And when I say why, I mean it talks about the word WHY. And it's something we're using in the Libertarian Party when we ask, what is our why? Why are we here? And it sounds like a simplistic question, yet it's quite profound. And if discussed, really forces you to drill down into areas that may or may not be comfortable, but we're not here to be comfortable. It's the people's money. And there's precious little bit to go around.
Well, it was a great article in the Wall Street Journal today, and the article was talking about how people are saying that corporations need to have social responsibility, and the author of the article was making the point by existing as a company and doing what they do as a company,
right,
that is their, really, in many ways, lots of times their social responsibility, you know.
The role of a corporation is to legally, emphasis legally, provide benefits and accrue wealth to their investors. There's not owners. That's the only role of a corporation. Anything else, should they choose to do it, is icing on the cake. Mm-hmm. I also like to point out to my friends listening who are just going into convulsions over that concept, is that the corporations that they so often decry as being evil are often publicly traded. And by definition, being publicly traded are often owned by pension funds. The most successful pension funds in America are union pension funds. So, by logical extension, when Mr. Romney spoke about, and I'm not a big Romney fan, but when he spoke about corporations being people, they actually really are. Because they're owned by people, particularly publicly traded ones, and very often owned by the same people who use them for political footballs. End of lecture, end of rant. But, to your point, all of these organizations, whether they be the individual sole proprietor, the corporation, collective, whatever you want to call it, operate really only with responsibility to themselves as long as they accrue no harm to anyone else. And the pressure that we put them under. I've quoted tonight twice. I love your reaction to this. Mike Rinaldi is the vice chair, and you know we sound off ideas off each other. He's the vice chair of the Libertarian Party, and he remarked that the ultimate, and I'll use my words, the ultimate irony, and then he remarked, was that tax breaks for the connected, incentives, are the ultimate admission of failure by the state government. Well, what do you mean by that? It's an open admission that if presented with a working environment that exists today, you won't succeed. Therefore, we have to give you these breaks. I find that to be very profound. And it puts the big lie to Governor Raimondo's largesse. I guess that's today's coalition word, largesse. Remember, we're old enough to remember when the duck would come down. The word of the day.
Right.
Yeah, it's no one in our audience will get that. All right, but that's the type of reasoning that needs to be batted around. You have failed to create an environment where people can prosper. Therefore, we must give you breaks from that failed environment.
And at the same time, when they're doing that to maybe new businesses coming in, what about the existing businesses that are struggling to survive?
Yeah.
You know, what's in it for them?
Well, the real heroes are, you know, I had just seen Manalowitz here earlier today in the show, and here's a young woman who's got a family, husband's a firefighter, you know, complicated life, very young child, who on her own with her own savings, with family and friends helping her, created this unique niche business. She's got a women's clothing store on wheels. Addresses so many situations, you know, that women face when buying clothes. You know, you try them on, you get the advantages of the pricing of the internet, but you try them on there, it brings it to you so you don't have to fight them all. Well, not to obsess over that business model, but what it's reflective of is a type of ingenuity that exists here in the state today, and that if allowed to prosper, we can avoid situations like Bucket Brewery,
Yes.
which unfortunately announced this week, and yet another shot at Pawtucket announced that it's closing.
Well, you know, listen to just caught the end of Joe Paolino's show a few weeks ago now, and he had former Speaker of the House Matthew Smith.
Wow.
And they were
There's a blast from the past.
Yeah, and they were talking, and Matthew Smith said something to Joe Paolino. Really, I was not aware of at the time. He said, Joe, he says, a third of the state of Rhode Island is on public assistance. A third of the state. And Joe Paolino did not disagree with them. A third of the state. Imagine that.
Yep.
I mean, that is just hard to accept.
You listen to that, you look at the ongoing UHIP situation, you listen to the testimony last night before Chairwoman Serpa, and then you look at the gross economic inequalities that are being created, I call it economic racism, by the governor's insistence on doling out millions of dollars. The term would be drunken sailor, I think, is the old reference.
Well, being a Navy man, I stay away from that.
But this, my big concern, quite frankly, who's going to appoint it. Because in the wrong hands, this actually could make the situation worse, and that's a challenge.
This is true, and so I was particularly happy about the minority and majority leader of both House and Senate, and the 5 general offices with a mix of general offices. Mm-hmm. This would be I think a good solution for choosing. And again, this is the same model we used when we chose the head of Veterans Affairs, Kasim Yarn, and he was a great choice.
Right. Or as the late great Vincent A. Buddy Cianci would have said, it gives you the opportunity to go on an intergalactic search.
Yes.
To get the right person.
Yes. And and it's been proven in so many states. I mean, it has saved literally hundreds of millions of dollars. And again, when I look at this budget, and yesterday we had a rally at the State House that I spoke at. I sponsored a bill yesterday. It was a bill to raise the scholarship cap that would have essentially helped schools, non-public schools. Again, doesn't cost any money to the public schools. Doesn't cost them $1, but it was specifically benefiting the Catholic, the Jewish, and Christian schools. That network.
Right.
I just, one of the representatives yesterday got up on the floor, day before yesterday, and talked about the number of shootings in Providence, and she raised the issue that her thinking that a lot of it has to do with poverty. And I don't necessarily disagree with that, but I think, educational background, opportunity once graduates from school. There was some editorials in the newspaper talking about that, especially because my wife and I are so involved in the minority communities here in the state. I call myself the New Republican. We're out there all the time, meeting these people, being with them. We don't do photo ops. We hang. We get involved. The growing Latino community, Latina community, there's been a number editorials about educationally they're behind, as well as ultimately leading to lack of jobs. And you know, and I said during my remarks, I said, look at, children were all sitting on the stairs from the different schools. I said, look at the ethnic breakdown of all the children. It was amazing. It was wonderful to see these kids involved in these schools and succeeding and doing well, and they're going to have a great future. And you know, there's a lot of great schools and there's a lot of schools that are not, but giving more of an opportunity, more of an alternatives. And right now we had a policy person come in from the Heritage Foundation, and also we had a member of the U.S. Department of Education come in. They both spoke. We had a luncheon that I sponsored, and they were saying that we only had 415 students because of the cap. It's 1.5 million. We have 450 students that were able to take advantage of that, and it's not even a percent. It's a minute of a percent. And so we want to try to raise that cap to 5 million to try to, again, give more students that opportunity. So one of the questions that, you know, that's asked, of course, is, you know, is where the money going to come from?
Right.
And again, I said, you know what, in a budget of $9.4 billion, which again is way out of whack, that's why I tout this type of approach with this Inspector General. If we can find those kind of dollars. And DCOF, all the problems they have, too many cases, too few on-the-ground people. But we're hearing that through, you know, a variety of state services. Yet we have all these top-heavy, you know, level executives, consultants, and so forth, and we don't have the worker bees.
Well, you had the situation earlier this week where the school principal was convicted of a misdemeanor because of her lack of understanding, purported lack of understanding, I guess it's under appeal, of fundamental law. And you look at that situation, and you look at the sheer size of RIDE, Rhode Island Department of Education, the sheer size of the Providence school system in terms of the bureaucracy, the number of folks involved in everything except actually education. And for her not to understand that, my wife's a teacher, was astonishing. The disconnect there that occurs. And then on a secondary level, the notion that the legislation was passed without the clear involvement of this Providence school department, that they weren't there on the ground floor involved in pushing the legislation, you know, as I guess the word du jour is stakeholders, was even more breathtaking. How can these disconnects occur when we spend, to be blunt, so much damn money?
I just, again, you know, there is a lot of moving parts on all phases of state government, and, you know, again, sometimes things get dropped, people aren't notified. I mean, I see this with constituents all the time when, you know, when they call me with some help in a particular matter. You know, the information hasn't trickled down to even the taxpayers sometimes, the basic Rhode Islander trying to access or use services, so, or changes in laws and things like that, you know. So it can be a challenge. But I think the point is we have an opportunity here to try to, I think, hopefully reinvent a government in many ways. And I think it's, you know, as his tagline is, it's the IG, you know, time has come. The time has come.
Where does the legislation sit now?
Well, our legislation is being redrafted because I had the bill that I used from last year, and Evan and I and everybody else, we sat down, and we've been talking through it. So we just sent it downstairs to be redrafted, and however long that takes, it'll come up, and then we will move forward with it.
What are the prospects of it getting a full hearing?
Oh, it'll definitely get a full hearing. If you ask for a hearing, it gets a hearing.
Right.
Yep. But the other thing too was interesting because I saw Ian Donis. He tweeted that Evan Shanley. We also agreed because Mr. Barabek was okay with this. That he said, you know, even if we got a study commission group in the fall to look at this, you know, to look at it further, he would be okay with that too. So just as a safeguard, we put in a second bill. Evan first signature. I'm second. On the IG bill, I'll be the first signature, he'll be the second, and the rest of the gang of 5 will be the other top signers. But basically, we want to make sure that, you know, one way or another, this is going to get a hearing. And and we're going to look at this because it is an idea that whose time has come, as Mr. Barabik likes to use that phrase.
Right. So it's held for further study. It would actually get studied.
Exactly. And but we're in such dire need financially. I don't see how anyone, and as we've talked to other folks in the chamber, people are excited about it and really want to be a part of it.
Right. So hence the head of steam. Hence the
Yes.
the sudden. Again, it's if you've been around the sausage factory for a while, you watch certain things grab people's attention to a point where it becomes a force unto itself.
Yep.
And I think that legislation clearly here. Speaker Mattiello was here earlier today.
Really?
I actually had a photo op with him.
Oh, that's right. I saw that. Yes.
We had a nice little chat, the brief one, but it was very polite, very cordial, and the contents of which I'll keep confidential. But I have great hope for the speaker. I do. I think his public position, I'm going to take at face value, that he's ultimately concerned about, that he's heard the taxpayer on the stadium issue. I'll take it face value, and he's cited on more than one occasion the overwhelming opposition that folks have on the stadium issue, and as a result of that, I would hope he would give this full hearing. Have you heard anything from leadership on their?
No. One of the things that Evan, Representative Shanley, wanted to do is arrange a meeting with the speaker, and that's when Mr. Barabik created this document, which again I'm going to leave with you also, besides the cheat sheet on the budget. Information briefing to Speaker Mattiello regarding the Inspector General. Very nicely done by Mr. Barabik, and everybody has a copy of it. We're all going through it, and this would be what we would hope to sit down and talk to the speaker about.
We need more Mr. Barabiks, don't we?
We should do. And honestly, I got to give Representative Shanley a lot of credit coming to me, as well as Maura Walsh, again, Representative Camille Villa-Wilkinson, as well as Ken Mendonça. I mean,
what's interesting is all of them, with the exception of you, are essentially freshmen, aren't they?
That's correct. That is correct. Isn't that interesting?
It puts light to the notion that you have to wait your turn to affect change, that you have to become one with the community, that you have to, what's the cliche, wait your turn.
But you see something in somebody, and we just all kind of just connected. It's been just kind of cool.
Yeah.
And we talked about maybe working on some other things together too.
Right.
It's just been a really great coming together moment.
Right. I had a very nice conversation with Representative Shanley the other night. He had actually hoped to join us tonight, but
yes, that's right.
Family illness precludes
that's
that.
Right.
They have a wee little beastie, scruffy little varmint in their house, who's feeling the impacts of this.
That's right.
I hope I'm sure he'll watch this at some point, and our support goes out to him. I think I'm going to have him on the show soon so that we can continue to flesh out this issue. It takes, you folks have done the lion's work on this. Now it's up to the activist community to get behind it and understand it, debate it, hash it out, let the process take place.
Yes.
Again, if we allow other people to do the work for us, it simply won't happen.
That's correct.
Interesting. We've got a few minutes left. What other concerns, issues do you have in terms of, we've got the budget now. You pointed out the scoops. What else concerns you about this budget? I mean, it's got to be a rat's nest to go through.
I do not sit on House Finance, but I'm concerned, obviously, with as much money as we have, how it's being spent. And again, they're holding these hearings for DCYF, for instance. Last year, they cut their budget by $7 million, as they've been doing each year, cutting it more and more. I just think we've got. You talk about Jonathan Keith, and we are dear friends. I did put in this year the zero-based budgeting bill, as I did last year, because I think we need to start over in as much as we can. I think there is a lot of work that needs to be done with this budget, and I think we dramatically need to decrease this budget and find the actual money to do the things we need to do. And a lot of it, I think, is being used for things that we don't need. And you talk about the Fossock Stadium, and I noticed there was the editorial by the Journal, and they talked about the courage it took or it takes to get behind the Paw Sox deal. And they mentioned the convention center, the courage it took. Well, the convention center, again, we've talked about this before, but it's worth reminding. I don't think it's a 38 Studios deal we're worried about. Not me. I'm worried about it being another convention center issue. We were told from year one that the convention center would make a minimum of $1 million. It has lost $20 to $30 million every year since it's opened. Well over $600 million.
Right.
And that is, it's not only a travesty, it's unconscionable given today's climate and lack of resources.
And given the fact that children are dying.
That's right. That's right.
Now, it's fascinating. I've been doing a little legwork into this. You know, for folks who aren't familiar with the Convention Center Authority, because there is one, they're not just a government entity, they're an authority.
Mm-hmm.
Convention Center Authority owns the Veterans, it owns the Dunkin' Donuts Center, it owns the Convention Center as well as 2 parking garages. I would suggest that it's time to bundle those up in a neat little tidy package and sell them.
Well, one of my fellow reps, Blake Filippi, you know, we were talking about this at one time early on. You know, when my minority leader was talking, you know, was raising this whole issue, and he said, well, what happens if, you know, if you stopped funding it? You know, it would wind up going bankrupt. Somebody would have to come in and buy it and run it. You know, but it definitely, at some point, you have to say, you know what, you got to stand on your own 2 feet. You know, I don't think enough citizens realize how much money we pour into that place. And we don't have any more events than we did when the Dunk stood by itself.
Well, I'm going to point out a major event if you're of a certain age. Elton John announced his farewell tour
Yes.
this past week. He's going to Boston. I might point out in my research, and I'm doing the verification, so it's my dream one day to be significant enough to actually get PolitiFact. But we often talk about the Gillette Stadium being privately owned. Delaware North owns the TD Garden.
Yes, that's right.
So the big lie has always been, as described by Ronald Reagan, the big lie is if you say something often enough, it's perceived to be the truth. So the notion that you certainly just can't build these type of buildings without these public-private partnerships is, as we say on the coalition, balderdash. You know, the 2 most successful buildings of that type in the entire Northeast are privately owned.
Mm-hmm.
And they have plenty of events. So Boston's getting Elton John. By the way, I went to the free Elton John concert in the park in Central Park when he opened up the concert by walking out dressed as a duck. An interesting moment for an 18-year-old from New Jersey. The Hartford is getting the Elton John farewell tour. Absent from the Elton John website is any mention at all of Providence getting the Elton John farewell tour.
Interesting.
Inquiring minds want to know, so we'll be making that call Monday, and I'm sure they'll call me right back. But to your point, the other big lie has been, and the gentleman running for governor and I got into this on a lively experiment one day, that you just need buildings like that. It's a verification of a state's legitimacy. Really? Okay. And besides, it attracts all types of business. Well, again, balderdash. I would like to see in writing an analysis, independent of the Economic Development Commission. By the way, I refuse to call them the Commerce Corporation anymore. Nice try, nice renaming, but you are the Economic Development Corporation. The EDC should not be involved in this. Independent, truly independent. In other words, that means the EDC doesn't go out and hire their college buddies to do it. It would be fascinating to see a truly independent study of the actual economic impact of the Convention Center Authority and all its buildings. They're lovely. I mean, what they did to the Veteran Centers is beautiful. I may be one of the few Rhode Islanders who's actually been to an event there. I would guarantee you, I would love to do a man on the street and ask people, have you been to the vet? You mean the Rhode Island Veterans Cemetery? No. Do you mean the Rhode Island Veterans Home? No. You mean the VFW? No. No, the Rhode Island Veterans Center. It's a beautiful building. We've proven in this state that we can't have nice things. Is it actually legitimately generating enough economic activity that, and this is the critical caveat, whereas that economic activity would not take place if it actually was a privately owned venture, to justify the type of subsidies that you have exposed. What's the other comment in the vernacular? What do the kids say? I doubt it. I don't think so. But we continue as a state to base our entire economic policy on a series of cliches, urban legends, and economic testimony from individual concerns who have a direct financial benefit from the continued existence of the very things you're testifying on. What do you think?
I think it would be great to do that study. We're at the point now where every dollar, with, again, what's going on for the average Rhode Islander, we need to leave no stone unturned, and we need to look at everything with a fresh eye. I agree.
How many caseworkers is $20 million a year?
You know, what's the caseloads right now? I don't even know, but I think last night, in testimony, I think I heard maybe 30, and yeah. I think the ideal is 14 cases. So, yeah.
Right. And then actually have, and it's not the role of government to go in and mitigate the life circumstances that that created this, but another part of this budget is based on the presence of, I think, a $29 million profit from sports betting.
Yes.
Now, as my colleague here at GoLocal Prop, who is a real reporter, Kate Nagel, pointed out, we hear $29 million, and the automatic assumption of the civilian is that $29 million in betting activity. No, that's $29 million state profit. For a $29 million state profit to be generated by sports betting, I believe, don't hold me to this, but Kate calculated, and on her research, that something in the tune of $800 million of actual activity would have to take place to generate, I believe, the roughly $29 million that Gina Raimondo's budget is calling for. Think about that. Think about the economic drain that represents to the economy. Think about the fact that the state holds a monopoly on that. Think about the fact that we subsidize a private corporation who would be the beneficiary of a monopoly on that. And what's even more troubling is the notion that under the state constitution, it's my understanding that if new forms of gambling take place, they have to be voted on. Yet, Ms. Raimondo, who finds, again, Rhode Island taxpayers to be a necessary inconvenience in order to maintain the bureaucracy that she believes is the true mission of Rhode Island state government, doesn't seem to agree with that. She's already got the $29 million in there. How do you do that?
I just find it sad commentary that the state's financial health is going to be focused on drugs, medical marijuana, and gambling. That is a sad commentary.
She wants to tax dying people and encourage people to engage in betting.
It's incredible.
Now, as a libertarian, if people want to engage in that activity, that's a life choice. I can't force them not to. But at the same time, on an economic level, the state should not be the sole beneficiary, nor do I believe is it appropriate for a state government to rely on games of chance in order to fund the few functions of government that actually are necessary.
And wait till, again, MGM facility up in Boston opens up, a $1 billion facility.
Oh, I drive past it a couple times a week.
That's right, you're working in Massachusetts. I'm really frightened to death because of our reliance of what's going to happen.
And we saw the numbers dip this year.
Yeah.
The first significant dip.
Yep.
Because ultimately, gambling is largely, I believe, and this is based on anecdotal evidence, to be a largely generational pursuit. I don't see people in their 20s and 30s obsessing over gambling the way that our generation does.
Well, and in addition, I mean, how many venues can you have before you've oversaturated?
Oh, and I think most studies
we've hit that.
Yeah, most studies have already proven that
we're hitting that.
We're hitting this, and we're pillaging, cannibalizing, if you will, better term, other facilities to get, just like in the state, the presence of a ballpark in conjunction with a state-owned, essentially, call it what the structure what you want, in conjunction with 2 state gambling facilities, cannibalizes income from free market activity. And we wonder why it's all screwed up. Well, thank you so much for coming in tonight to bring additional, I think a couple of my big takeaways from this, you've addressed the concerns I've had, and that's my personal endorsement. You know, the Libertarian Party will come together and analyze this in the uniquely quirky way that we do. But at the same token, I am relieved to find out that it's not going to be the sole appointee of any one particular individual, that there are some checks and balances in place. And I am especially glad to see that the Gang of Five is diving into the substance of this and not just kind of throwing something together. And here, our last generational reference of the night, it ain't Judy Garland getting together and saying, let's do a show. So, thank you so much for joining us tonight on the fly. I know it's been a busy day. Representative Bob Lancia, in the current other theme of tonight, what district are you from?
District 16 in Cranston.
District 16 in Cranston. State Representative, Republican, working aggressively with folks from across both the philosophical aisle and the party aisle to bring together an aggressive display of legislative insight to provide an inspector general to, on an ongoing basis, and analyze state operations for inefficiencies, waste, and outright fraud, and perhaps bring to Rhode Islanders not only financially a sense of peace, but also spiritually, if you will, the notion that it isn't, even when it's not, it isn't everyday run amok up there. No. There's a philosophical piece that you can bring to Rhode Islanders, knowing that there's someone aggressively looking at this on a proactive basis, and not like the Providence Journal or Channel 10, waiting for the scandal to break and then acting like heroes.
Thank you.
All right, folks, it's been a hell of a night here on the Coalition. We are the Coalition, loud and proud, outrage, porn-free, civilly disobedient media, broadcasting live on the worldwide Coalition Media Network, here at the GoLocal Live Broadcast Center, 90 Way Boston Street, in the heart of the city we love, Providence, Rhode Island. Again, it's a little chilly tonight, nothing like what we've experienced in the past few weeks, so it's a wonderful night to come down to Providence and sample its tawdry pleasures. CoalitionRadio.us, Facebook.com/The Coalition Radio, and of course on the mighty Twitter at Coalition_Radio, and a plug for our all Billionaire Baseball Boys Club, anti-crony corporatists, Wet Fenway Dream, apolitical Twitter feed at Pawtucket is home. Folks, next week we've got to tease it. We have a city council chairman coming on. We've got a gubernatorial candidate coming on. More fun and games here at the Coalition. Stay tuned. We're certainly going to be back. Folks, as always, take it personally. Good night.